It's the appellee's burden before the circuit court to prove waiver and release. And so if there's information that supports the waiver or release, or if there's information that supports that they were a successor corporation or that they were an affiliate, then they have the obligation to bring that before the circuit court. He's arguing, the appellee's arguing that it's not just the lease agreements. There are other agreements. There's a franchise agreement and a fuel supply agreement and a proprietary marks agreement. Those are referenced in the lease agreement, but we don't have those agreements in front of us. If those had anything to do with proving that Turnouts was a successor or an affiliate of Cross America Partners, then those should have been put into the record. As it is, they're not in the record, so they can't. We can't look at those documents and say that, oh, here it shows that they have the power to control Turnouts. They're simply not in the record, and so they can't be used as any type of evidence that Turnouts ceded such control to Cross America Partners. Additionally, despite what the appellee might say, the severance agreement says nothing about Turnouts. It's mentioned that there are these employees that are losing their jobs and employees that are going to keep their jobs. It doesn't reference Turnouts at all. As of the time, we mentioned before, as of the time that my client signed the severance agreement, he already knew that he wasn't going to be employed by Turnouts. They had made those decisions and told him, and he continued to be employed by Cross America Partners for about another month. And so then when he lost his employment with Cross America Partners, that's when he signed the release that doesn't say anything about Turnouts, and there are no documents in the record which indicate that Turnouts is an affiliate or a successor of Cross America Partners, or that Cross America Partners in some way had the ability to control the management and the policies of Turnouts. And for those reasons, Let me
ask one question.
Yes, ma'am.
So just going back to what you were just explaining about the facts, did he have to be denied a job by Turnouts in order to qualify for the severance from Cross America Partners?
That information's not in the record. We know that, and I've indicated in the record that there are two other cases, two other men that I represent, whose cases are in the circuit courts below with Judge King and Judge Walker, I believe, or excuse me, Judge Bailey. And they're awaiting the decision on this court, and it's the same facts. Older gentleman denied employment, signed a release with Cross America Partners. So we know that there are three that had to sign, or that signed release with Cross America Partners when they lost their employment with Cross America Partners. But there's no evidence in the record about what happened to any of the other employees as far as a release or not a release.
Was there any period of time during this that your client was ever technically employed by Turnouts? I mean, or was this all took place before Turnouts started actually issuing paychecks?
There's nothing in the record which indicates that when Turnouts started issuing checks and things, but I can tell you that that my client was never employed by Turnouts and always received his checks from Cross America Partners. And I believe it is in the record that once he was denied employment with Turnouts, he assisted with transferring all of the work documents and things, all the necessary items to Turnouts so that they could begin their operations.
All right. No further questions. Thank you.
Thank you.
The next case for oral argument, State of West Virginia versus Dennis S., docket number 180594, and this is an appeal from the Circuit Court of Calhoun County.
Good morning, Your Honors. May it please the Court, my name is Justin Collin. I work for Public Defender Services, and I represent the petitioner in this matter. In this case, the Circuit Court rejected a plea agreement that it found to be in the public interest solely because my client refused to admit guilt. The state concedes error in this case. They concede that this was an abuse of discretion. So the real issue for this court here is what the proper remedy should be. I would argue that the appropriate remedy should be guided by this court's precedent, and that's found in Kennedy v. Frazier, in State v. Witt, and in State v. Parr.
Let me interrupt you to ask this. When the lower court said, I'm not going to accept this plea agreement because the defendant wants to have a Kennedy plea,
Yes.
refuses to acknowledge any guilt, and that was denied, and then you all went to trial, wouldn't the proper remedy have been for the defendant to come up here on a writ and bring this issue to us instead of going to trial, getting convicted, and then, oh, I want to go back to that Kennedy plea now?
So that's what happened in Kennedy v. Frazier. Came up here on a writ of prohibition. However, if you look at State v. Witt and State v. Parr, those are direct appeals. It could go either way. A writ might save some time. I'd argue that since the issue here is abuse of discretion, that's maybe not proper on an extraordinary writ, and you should go through the entire process and come up here on direct appeal.
I'm anxious to hear why the state admits error here. It seems to me that when you look at that Myers v. Frazier case, that it's in the judge's sound discretion on whether it's in the best consistent with the public interest in the fair administration of justice. Here we had someone who was accused and then apparently was convicted of first-degree child molestation, and they wanted to let him have a plea to lower charges, but without any acceptance of guilt or responsibility. And I'm not really understanding why that is an abuse of the court's discretion, because that's the kind of case where you want to feel, the public needs to feel there's some kind of fairness and justice there. And probably the victim in a case like that deserves that too.
The shorter answer is because Kennedy v. Frazier says that the court cannot reject a guilty plea simply because the defendant does not want to admit guilt. There's substantial policy reasons behind that rule. This court and the United States Supreme Court have recognized that sometimes a defendant will find that it's in their best interest to plead guilty despite maintaining their innocence. Kennedy v. Frazier pleas protect defendants in those circumstances from being forced into trials and forced into disastrous trials, disastrous outcomes. That's what happened here. As you mentioned, the plea offer was a 2 to 10-year sentence, where the maximum sentence would be 2 to 10, and he ended up with a 26 to 60-year sentence. I think this court accepts Kennedy v. Frazier pleas because it promotes judicial economy. It avoids unnecessary trials. In this court, I believe, or in this case, the trial was unnecessary. There's also this idea that our system of justice is a system that's built on pleas. And the Kennedy v. Frazier plea is another mechanism to keep the wheels of justice turning.
Do you disagree that had this judge used the correct verbiage, that she would have had an absolute right to refuse this plea? If she'd have made a comment that upon review of the facts and circumstances in this case, it is not in the public interest for me to accept this plea, I therefore refuse. Is that, she could have done that?
Yes, it is completely within her discretion to reject the plea if she found that it was not within the public interest.
So what we're talking about here is verbiage. I mean, she used, what you're saying is she used the wrong language in terms of refusing it instead of...
I'm sorry, I disagree, Your Honor. I understand your point. But in this case, on 3 separate occasions, the court said that I'll accept a guilty plea, I will not accept a Kennedy v. Frazier plea. She said that during the plea hearing. She said that in her order memorializing the plea hearing, and then on the first day of trial, she again let the defendant know that that offer is still on the table. He could plead guilty. He can't plead pursuant to Kennedy v. Frazier.
What's wrong with that? If she had used the right language, what's wrong with that?
There's nothing wrong with it if she had used the right language. It's not the right language. She clearly said that the issue wasn't the plea agreement itself.
It's public acceptance of responsibility for a crime that there is some public interest in the proper administration of justice.
Yes, and I would argue that it's not the court's place to decide whether the defendant should admit guilt or not. The prosecuting attorney is in a unique position to ensure that victims receive individualized justice. In this case, if that was a concern for the state, they could have easily structured the plea agreement and refused to allow the defendant to plead guilty pursuant to Kennedy v. Frazier. However, if you look at the transcript, when the defendant said, I want to plead pursuant to Kennedy, what the prosecutor said is, okay, no problem, let me change the paperwork real quick. So that wasn't a concern for the state.
But the Myers v. Frazier case, one of the syllabus points is that a criminal defendant has no constitutional right to have his case disposed of by way of a plea bargain or to have his guilty plea accepted.
Correct.
So if there's no constitutional right to have your guilty plea accepted, then I don't understand why you would think there's a constitutional right to have your Kennedy plea accepted.
There's no constitutional right for the Kennedy plea, Your Honor. This court, if it wants, it can abolish Kennedy pleas. It can modify Kennedy pleas. There's no constitutional right to it. The Supreme Court has said that, also said that admissions are not a constitutional prerequisite to a guilty plea. So yeah, they don't have the right to plead guilty. But in this court, or in this case, the circuit court said it would accept a guilty plea.
Well, there's a difference between a guilty plea and a Kennedy plea. They have the same legal effect, ultimately, of a conviction based on guilt, but it doesn't have the same effect based on the public administration of justice, arguably.
So, as you said, Your Honor, there's no material difference between the two pleas, and there's no material difference between a Kennedy plea, a traditional guilty plea, or a no contest plea. West Virginia does not require that an admission of conduct accompany a guilty plea. There's three things that this court cares about, or three things that a circuit court has to find prior to accepting a guilty plea. One, it has to make sure that the plea is being entered knowingly, voluntarily, and understandingly. There has to be a factual basis, but there's no requirement on who lays that factual basis. It can be the defendant by admitting his conduct. It can be the state during a Kennedy plea. As a defense attorney, I've laid the factual basis on a number of occasions. So this court isn't concerned with who lays the factual basis. What I think, Your Honor, you're getting at is that the court also has to consider the general public's perception that crime should be prosecuted and the interests of the victims. And again, when considering those, the court looks at the weight of the evidence, the nature of the crime, the defendant's criminal history, whether the plea adequately protects society, whether the interests of the victims are being taken care of. And in this case, the court made that analysis, underwent that analysis, and determined that under this plea agreement, it was acceptable because she said she would accept it as a guilty plea. And again, it's incumbent upon the prosecutor to engage in a dialogue with the victim, and that's outlined in the Victim Protection Act. And it's the prosecutor who sits in the position to ensure that if this is not an appropriate case for a Kennedy v. Frazier plea, it's the prosecutor's duty to make sure that doesn't happen. In this case, the prosecutor didn't have any problems with the Kennedy plea. And under this...
When you go into the Myers factors that you just listed, one of those is the seriousness of the criminal charge.
Yes, sir.
And so while the circuit judge didn't specifically say the seriousness, it seems like the comments that she did make, to me, go to that issue. In other words, she's saying this is not the type of case. This is not the facts of this case don't allow or don't lend itself to what she would accept in that case. So is it not the case that she actually did, there's evidence that she did consider those factors, whether she set out every single one of those in her decision? If she decided on based on those factors, was she not permitted to decide whether she wanted to accept the plea or not?
Your Honor, if this case, excuse me, if this plea offer was too lenient in this case, then the court would not, the lower court, would not have accepted a guilty plea. The fact that it would accept a guilty plea, again, as you said, Your Honor, there's no material difference between a guilty plea and a plea pursuant to Kennedy v. Frazier, with the exception of perhaps some intangible psychological benefits that a victim might receive from hearing the defendant say or admit to their conduct. But again, that is something that the prosecutor can ensure happens. Circuit courts need to be concerned with practical outcomes, tangible outcomes, and as you said, Your Honor, it doesn't matter what label we attach to the plea. In each instance, the The defendant is waiving his right to a trial, and he's acquiescing to a conviction and sentence as outlined in the plea agreement. It doesn't matter if it's a guilty plea, a Frazier plea, or a no contest plea. The results are always the same, and that's what the court should be concerned with, is results, not intangible benefits to victims, which are important, obviously, but that's where the prosecution steps in.
No questions? Thank you. You can respond, please.
Good morning, Justices. May it please the Court, my name is Karen Villanueva-Matkovich, and I'm a Deputy Attorney General here on behalf of the state in this matter. The Attorney General has the discretion to confess error in criminal cases before this Court, and in the matter of Dennis S., after careful analysis and thorough examination, the state feels that error is appropriate in this matter. The state agrees that there was error committed below when the circuit court rejected the plea agreement on the basis solely that the defendant would not admit guilt and that it was a Kennedy plea. The state, in looking at this matter, found that the facts of this case fall squarely within the 2000 decision, State v. Parr, in which this court held that it is an abuse of discretion for the circuit court to reject a plea solely because a defendant fails to or refuses to admit guilt. Now, unless the court has questions on that point, the only difference between the position of the state and the petitioner is with respect to the relief requested, and I'll focus the remainder of my argument on that.
Let me ask you first, under State v. Parr, did the defendant go ahead and go to trial and get a conviction like as is the case here?
Yes, Your Honor, she did. And in the remedy in that case, the court found that the matter should be remanded, the convictions reversed, and directed the state to reoffer the plea agreement to the defendant.
And was that an original syllabus point in that case on that issue?
Yes, Your Honor, it was. I believe it was syllabus point 1. And I will pull that quickly.
No, that's
no,
a per curiam
sorry.
case, so that didn't have an original syllabus point.
Oh, no, it did not. I stand corrected.
That did not establish law so much as it could be used for guidance.
It was, yes, it was a holding.
Is there a case
Yes.
in West Virginia where there's a syllabus point that says that?
The House will please come to order. Those persons not having privileges of the floor will please vacate the chamber at this time, and all members and guests in the galleries will please rise as we are led in prayer by the gentleman from the 29th, Douglas Steele.
Pray with me as you feel led. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread. Forgive us our trespasses as we forgive those who trespass against us. Lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, the power, and the glory, forever and ever. Amen.
Members and guests, please remain standing as we are led in the Pledge of Allegiance by the gentleman, the 51st, Douglas Williams.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Will you please join me in honoring our flag? I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Members and guests may be seated. Reading of the Journal.
Journal of the House of Delegates, Charleston, Monday, February 17th, 2020.
The gentleman, the 47th, Douglas Phillips.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I ask unanimous consent that the further reading of the journal be dispensed with and that it be approved as having been read.
The gentleman, the 47th, Douglas Phillips, asks unanimous consent that further reading of the journal be dispensed with and to be approved as having been read. Are there objections? Chair hears no objections. Introduction of guests. Introduction of guests. Gentleman, the 23rd, Delegate Miller.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I have two special pages here with us today representing Scott High School. First, we have Emma Harmon and Berta Pintado, who comes from us from Madrid, Spain as an exchange student at Scott High School, and they are escorted by their soccer coach located in the West Gallery, Dale Kimbler. If they would all please stand and the House make them feel welcome.
Lady in the third, Douglas Storage.
As you know, I fully enjoy the day when my daytime pays the bills job and my legislative service coincides or collides. Today, Delegate Fluharty and I are very pleased to have some representatives of Leadership Wheeling in the South Gallery. I'd ask them to stand and the House to make them welcome.
The gentleman to 31st, Douglas Tony.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Today I'm pleased to have some pages from the 31st District, if they would stand when I call their name. Alaya Combs from Marsh Fork Elementary and her parents Eli and Crystal Combs. Also have Jonathan Hundley and his mother Shelley, also from Marsh Fork. And then from Clear Fork, Katie Cantley and her grandmother Blanche. If they all would stand and House make them feel welcome.
The gentleman to 10th, Douglas Kelly.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Please join the delegates from Wood County in welcoming our friends in the West Gallery from the Meta-Ohio Valley Chamber of Commerce. If they please stand, and the Chamber, please make them feel welcome. Thank you.
The gentleman to 40th, Douglas Jeffries.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Today we have joining us from the 40th District as a page, Nadia Goff. Nadia is homeschooled, and today she is being chaperoned by her mother, Audrey Goff, in the West Gallery. Please make them feel welcome.
The gentleman to 34th, Douglas Boggs.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. I'm very happy to introduce this morning in the West Gallery. First of all, Courtney Hoover from Braxton County, if she would stand, and also along with Courtney, we have men and women from the West Virginia Occupational Therapy Association, the Occupational Therapy Assistant students from the University of Charleston Beckley, and occupational therapy students from WVU. If they would all stand and the members would please make them welcome.
The gentleman to 14th, Douglas Butler.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Joining us today from Point Pleasant Junior High, we have one page I know for sure here, and the other one I think is going to be here, so I'm going to introduce her also. But first we have Bryce Holcomb, and he's chaperoned by his mom, Brianne Holcomb. If these two would stand, please. And also from Point Pleasant Junior High, if she made it, we have Avery Hessen, accompanied by Kara Shaw. If those would stand up, and the House please welcome them.
The lady in the 50th, Douglas Longstreth.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Today, on behalf of Delegate Caputo, Delegate Angelucci, and myself, we have some members of the Marion County Education Association visiting with us. And if they would stand when I read their names, it's Allison Perry, Amanda Mullins, and Ross Higgins. Would you please welcome them? Thank you.
The gentleman to 48th, Douglas Queen.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I have a page today from Lincoln Middle School, Cade Riley, if he can stand, as well as his parents, Clay and Whitney Riley. They're joining us in the gallery. If everybody would please make them welcome.
The gentleman to 60th, Douglas Wilson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. In the South Gallery, my friend Mark Schneider is here. He is a Navy veteran, a nuclear expert from Chesapeake, Virginia, and he's here to assess the feasibility of nuclear power in West Virginia. Thank you, sir.
The gentleman to 42nd, Douglas Campbell.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Delegate Lavender Bowe and I have two pages today from Eastern Greenbrier Middle School. If they'll stand when I call their name, Lily Dents and Matney Poe. They're brought here today by their parents up in the West Gallery. If they'll stand, Brian and Kara Dents, Also, Edward and Jonna Bowyer. Will the House please make them welcome?
Lady in the 51st, Douglas Walker.
Good morning, Mr. Speaker. Thank you. Today we have Delta Day here at the Capitol. And so I would like for all the sorors of Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated, please stand up. They are in the West Gallery. This sorority was founded on January 13th, 1913 by 22 women at Howard University in Washington, D.C. You see, this African-American-led sorority targeted the African-American community. These women met requirements regardless of religion, race, or nationality. And would the House please make these leaders in our communities and our state feel welcome in the People's House? Thank you for being here.
The gentleman to the 20th, Douglas Brown.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Today, paging at the Capitol from the 20th District from Lenore, West Virginia, the city which I now live, are 3 pages. I'd like for them to stand up when I introduce them. One is Luke Bartram. The other is Gabriella Hatfield and Mr. River Vance. If they would stand, they're being chaperoned by Travis Turner, and Luke Bartram is being chaperoned by Lou Potter. If they would stand and the House recognize them. Thank you all.
The gentleman 19th, Douglas Thompson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. On behalf of myself and Delegate Hicks, we have several pages here today from Dunlow Elementary. If they would please stand, their names are Jay Copley, Kendra Meddings, Bailey Newsom, and Damian Toney. Please give them a round of applause.
The gentleman 19th, Douglas Hicks.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. On behalf of Delegate Thompson, myself, and the other delegates in Wayne County, I'd like to announce that we have 2 special guests with us today. These are educators from Wayne County, and longtime educators, I may say, and they're visiting with us, and it's and if you would, when I announce your name, please stand. It's Amber McCoy and Danny Mayo. House, please give them a hearty welcome.
The gentleman 51st, Douglas Hanson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. In one of the galleries, we have people visiting from the West Virginia University School of Medicine, the Division of Occupational Therapy. So on behalf of all of the delegates from Monongalia County, I'd like to welcome Professor Rondalyn Whitney, Billie Jean Bell, Caitlin Shields, and Shelby Cart. If the House could please make them welcome.
Gentleman the 40th, Douglas Jeffries.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Just made aware that I have a constituent visiting today in the gallery from the Elk River area. She's here with West Virginia State University. If you could, please make her feel welcome, Alina Harper.
Are there further introductions? If not, reports to standing committees.
Your Committee on Rules has had under consideration House Concurrent Resolution 4, United States Marine Corps Lance Corporal Michael Lynn Cooper Memorial Bridge. Committee substitute for House Concurrent Resolution 13, Watts Brothers Memorial Bridge. House Concurrent Resolution 14, United States Army Staff Sergeant Wendell Otho Castro Memorial Bridge. Committee substitute for House Concurrent Resolution 17, United States Army Private First Class William E. Ed Smith and West Virginia Army National Guard Staff Sergeant Edward L. Eddie Smith Memorial Bridge. House Concurrent Resolution 19, Gold Star Families Highway. Committee substitute for House Concurrent Resolution 20, United States Army Private First Class James Ray Miller Memorial Bridge. Committee substitute for House Concurrent Resolution 21, United States Army Specialist for Franklin D. Ashley II Memorial Bridge. Committee substitute for House Concurrent Resolution 32, Wolf Brothers, Edward, William, Paul, George, and Fred World War II Veterans Memorial Bridge. Committee substitute for House Concurrent Resolution 33, United States Air Force Lieutenant Colonel Frederick Donald Belknap Memorial Bridge. House Concurrent Resolution 34, requesting the Division of Highways to place at least 10 additional signs along highways entering West Virginia, honoring fallen veterans and Gold Star families. House Concurrent Resolution 35, United States Navy Boiler Technician Second Class Wade E. Burnside Memorial Bridge. House Concurrent Resolution 38, United States Army Private First Class Now C. Ballard Memorial Road. House Concurrent Resolution 39, Coach Kenny Wright Road. House Concurrent Resolution 45, United States Army Sergeant John Matthew Tully Memorial Bridge. House Concurrent Resolution 52, United States Army Private First Class Paul Eugene Gregg Memorial Bridge. House Concurrent Resolution 53, United States Army Air Corps Tech Sergeant Ralph A. Ray Memorial Bridge. Committee substitute for House Concurrent Resolution 54, Private First Class Marvin K. Sonny Sherman Memorial Bridge. House Concurrent Resolution 55, Pendleton County Veterans Killed in Action Memorial Bridge. House Concurrent Resolution 62, United States Marine Corps Corporal Guy Maywood Edwards Memorial Bridge. House Concurrent Resolution 65, United States Army Tech 5 Donald Tiny Lucas Memorial Bridge. And House Concurrent Resolution 70, United States Army Air Corps Private Albert Sutphin Memorial Highway. Reports the same back with recommendation that each be adopted. Your Committee on Finance has had under consideration House Bill 4363, establishing the West Virginia Division of Natural Resources Police Officer Retirement System. Reports back a committee substitute, therefore, with the recommendation that the committee substitute do pass.
The report will be received.
Your Committee on Finance has had under consideration Senate Bill 573, supplementing, amending, and increasing appropriations of public monies for claims against the state. Reports the same back with the recommendation that it do pass.
The report will be received.
Your Committee on Education has had under consideration House Bill 4408, creating an online database for school principals' employment opportunities. Reports back committee substitute, therefore, with the recommendation that the committee substitute do pass.
The report will be received.
Your Committee on Education has had under consideration House Bill 4843, relating to public school education assessment of students for dyslexia and dyscalculia, with amendment. Reports the same back with amendment, with the recommendation that it do pass, that it be referred to Committee on Finance.
The report will be received and the bill will be referred to the Committee on Finance.
Your Committee on Education has had under consideration House Bill 4568, requiring the State Board of Education to provide for the routine education of all professional educators. Reports the same back with the recommendation that it do pass, that it be referred to Committee on Finance.
The report will be received. The bill will be referred to the Committee on Finance.
Your Committee on Education has had in consideration House Bill 4737, clarifying student eligibility for state-sponsored financial aid. Reports the same back with the recommendation that it do pass.
The report will be received.
Your Committee on Education has had in consideration Senate Concurrent Resolution 10, requesting study of current West Virginia laws relating to anti-bullying measures in schools. Reports the same back with recommendation that it be adopted, that it be referred to Committee on Rules.
The report will be received. The resolution will be referred to the Committee on Rules.
Your Committee on Education has had under consideration Committee substitute Substitute for Senate Bill 623, allowing non-citizen of U.S. be eligible for a teaching certificate. Reports the same back with the recommendation that it do pass.
The report will be received.
Your Committee on Judiciary has had into consideration House Bill 4523, removing the limitation of number of apprentice hunting and trapping licenses a person may purchase. Reports the same back with the recommendation that it do pass.
The report will be received.
Your Committee on Judiciary has had into consideration House Bill 2321, allowing workers' compensation benefits for first responders diagnosed with post-traumatic stress disorder. Reports back committee substitute, therefore, with the recommendation that the committee substitute do pass.
Report will be received. Pursuant to Rule 80, bill will be referred to the Committee on Finance.
Your Committee on Government Organization has had into consideration House Bill 4443, shifting funding from the Landfill Closure Assistance Fund to local solid waste authorities. Reports the same back with amendment with the recommendation that it do pass as amended, that it be referred to Committee on Finance.
Report will be received. Bill will be referred to the Committee on Finance.
Your Committee on Government Organization has had under consideration House Bill 3098, allowing the same business owner to brew and sell beer to also distill and sell liquor, and House Bill 4820, relating to inventory of firearms owned by state agencies. Reports back committee substitutes, therefore, with the recommendation that the committee substitutes each do pass.
Report to be received.
Your Committee on Government Organization has had under consideration House Bill 4645, establishing the Office of Regulatory and Fiscal Affairs under the Joint Committee on Government and Finance. Reports back committee substitute, therefore, with the recommendation that the committee substitute do pass.
Report to be received.
Your Committee on Government Organization has had under consideration committee substitute for Senate Bill 175, requiring certain agencies maintain website which concerns the specific information. Reports the same back with amendment with the recommendation that it do pass, that it be referred to Committee on Finance.
Report to be received. Bill will be referred to the Committee on Finance.
Your Committee on Government Organization has had under consideration committee substitute for Senate Bill 551, relating to Water and Wastewater Investment and Infrastructure Improvement Act. Reports the same back with amendment with the recommendation that it do pass as amended, that it be referred to Committee on Finance.
Report to be received. Bill will be referred to the Committee on Finance.
Your Committee on Judiciary has had under consideration House Bill 4452, modifying the notice requirements for the redemption of delinquent properties. House Bill 4474, relating to peer-to-peer car sharing programs. House Bill 4522, allowing division to accept documents compliant with Real ID Act for proof of identity. House Bill 4557, relating to centers and institutions that provide the care and treatment of mentally ill or intellectually disabled individuals, and House Bill 4634, Southern West Virginia Lake Development Study Commission Act. Reports the same back. Reports back committee substitutes, therefore, with recommendation that the committee substitutes each do pass.
The report to be received. Are there further reports of standing committees? If not, reports of select committees. Messages from the executive.
Delegate Hanshot. Mr. Speaker, presents a communication from His Excellency the Governor, advising that on February 17, 2020, he approved Committee Substitute for House Bill 4042, Committee Substitute for House Bill 4091, and Committee Substitute for House Bill 4496.
The message will be received. Are there further messages from the executive? If not, messages from the Senate.
The Clerk of the Senate announced that the Senate has passed with amendment Committee Substitute for House Bill 2086, Uniform Real Property Electronic Recording Act.
The message will be received. Lady from the 49th.
Mr. Speaker, I ask unanimous consent that the bill be taken up for immediate consideration.
Lady from the 49th, ask unanimous consent that Committee Substitute for House Bill 2086 be taken up for immediate consideration. Are there objections? The chair hears no objection. Lady from the 49th.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. If you'll recall, this bill authorizes county clerks to accept documents for electronic recording. The bill that passed the House put the commissioner of the DOH, Department of Highways, in charge of chairing the Real Property Electronic Recording Standards Advisory Committee. The Senate amendment removes the DOH commissioner and places the Secretary of State as chair of the committee. The Senate amendment also adds 2 members to the committee. Therefore, Mr. Speaker, I move we concur with the Senate amendment.
The question before the House is the motion that the House concur in the Senate amendments to Committee Substitute for House Bill 2086. This is a debatable question. Are there members who wish to speak to the motion? If not, those in favor of the motion that the House concur in the Senate amendments will say aye. Those opposed will say no. The ayes have it, and the motion is adopted. The House has concurred in the Senate amendments to committee substitute for House Bill 2086. The question now before the House is the passage of the bill as amended by the Senate. Are there members who wish to speak to passage of the bill? If not, those in favor of passage of the bill will vote aye. Those opposed will vote no. The clerk will prepare the machine. Has every member voted? If so, the clerk will close the machine and ascertain the result. On this question, there are 97 ayes, 1 nay, and 2 members absent not voting. A majority of members elected having voted in the affirmative, the chair declares the bill passed. The clerk will please report the title.
Committee substitute for House Bill 2086.
Are there amendments to the title? If not, the title is read by the clerk will be and remain the title of the bill. The clerk will please communicate the action of the House to the Senate. Next message from the Senate.
Senate is passed with amendment with the title amendment. Committee substitute for House Bill 2497 relating to the whistleblower law.
Message will be received. Lady from the 49th.
Mr. Speaker, I ask unanimous consent that the bill be taken up for immediate consideration.
Lady from the 49th asks unanimous consent that the bill be taken up for immediate consideration. Are there objections? The chair hears no objection. Lady from the 49th.
The purpose of House Bill 2497 is to extend or clarify protections under the state's whistleblower law. The Senate's amendment just rearranged the provisions of the bill and did not alter the intent of the bill. I urge passage. Or I move we concur with the Senate amendment.
Lady from the 49th moves that the House concur in the Senate amendment and title amendment to the bill. This is a debatable question. Are there members who wish to speak to the motion? If not, those in favor of the motion that the House concur in the Senate amendment and title amendment to committee substitute for House Bill 2497 will say aye. Those opposed will say no. The ayes have it. The chair declares the motion adopted. The House has concurred in the Senate amendment and title amendment. The question now before the House is, shall the bill pass? This is a debatable question. Are there members who wish to speak to passage of the bill? If not, those in favor of passage will vote aye. Those opposed will vote no. The clerk will prepare the machine. Has every member voted? If so, the clerk will close the machine and ascertain the result. On this question, there are 91 ayes, 7 nays, and 2 members absent not voting. A majority of members elected having voted in the affirmative, the chair declares the bill passed. The clerk will please report the title.
Committee substitute for House Bill 2497.
Are there further title amendments? If not, the title as amended by the Senate and concurred to by the House will be and remain the title of the bill. The clerk will please communicate the action of the House to the Senate. Next message.
The Senate has passed with amendment and a title amendment House Bill 2922 relating to requirements to obtain a final order of discharge and dismissal for possession of opiates or opioids.
Message will be received. Lady from the 49th.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I ask unanimous consent that the bill be taken up for immediate consideration.
The lady from the 49th asks unanimous consent that House Bill 2922 be taken up for immediate consideration. Are there objections? The chair hears no objection. Lady from the 49th.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This bill allows a court to require a defendant charged with possession of a Class 1, 2, 3, or 4 controlled substance to require the defendant to be evaluated for admission into a drug court program or participate in a drug treatment program as the condition for the entry of a final order or discharge or dismissal. The Senate amendment expands the scope to apply to non-opioid Class 2, 3, and 4 drugs. Therefore, Mr. Speaker, I move we concur with the Senate amendment and title amendment.
Lady from the 49th moves that the House concur in the Senate amendment and title amendment to House Bill 2922. Is this a debatable question? Are the members who wish to speak to the motion? If not, those in favor of the motion will say aye. Those opposed will say no. The ayes have it. Chair declares the motion adopted. The House has concurred in the Senate amendment and title amendment to House Bill 2922. The question now before the House is, shall the bill pass? Are there members who wish to speak to passage of the bill? If not, those in favor of passage will vote aye. Those opposed will vote no. The clerk will prepare the machine. Has every member voted? If so, the clerk will close the machine and ascertain the result. On this question, there are 93 ayes, 5 nays, and 2 members absent not voting. A majority of members elected having voted in the affirmative. The chair declares the bill passed. The clerk will please report the title.
House Bill 2922.
Are there further amendments to the title? If not, the title as amended by the Senate and concurred to by the House will be and remain the title of the bill. The clerk will please communicate the action of the House to the Senate. Next message.
The Senate has passed with amendment and a title amendment House Bill 4007, Born Alive Abortion Survivors Protection Act.
The message will be received. For what purpose does the gentleman of the 17th, Douglas Lovejoy, seek recognition?
Point of inquiry, Mr. Speaker. On House Bill 2321, a few minutes ago, it appeared there was a fourth reference to a committee to finance.
Chair will have to look for the bill number.
2321, coming out of Judiciary.
Yes, Chair was advised that Judiciary sent the bill out with questions regarding the financial implications of the bill.
Question, it was committee substitute, Mr. Speaker, and without a motion voted upon by the members to be referred to finance, would it be appropriate under Rule 98 for a fourth reference?
Chair is only acting on the information provided to him. Chair will consult the parliamentarian on that and respond to the question momentarily.
Thank you.
Let's take up Senate message on House Bill 4007. The message has been received. Lady from the 49th.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. House Bill 4007, the purpose of this bill is to require a physician to use reasonable medical judgment if a child is born alive when an abortion is performed. The Senate amendment replaced the word child with fetus and changes the standard to determine whether the section has been violated from intentionally or recklessly or knowingly and willingly. The amendment Apologies. I move that we concur with the Senate amendment with further amendment.
This is on House Bill 4007?
Yes. The further amendment would replace the word child with fetus. However, in 3 of the cases in which the word fetus is used, it is not appropriate given the context of the sentence, and the word child is more appropriate.
The lady from the 49th has moved that the House concur in the Senate amendment and title amendment to House Bill 4007 with further amendment, as just explained by the lady from the 49th. This is a debatable question. Are there members who wish to speak to adoption of the motion? The lady from the 51st, Douglas Flesher, is recognized.
Question of the lady from the 49th.
Yes, ma'am. I'm
Lady
sorry,
does
I
yield for a
wasn't
question.
clear, probably.
Well, no. I think the way that is written, it says it changes the standard from intentional, reckless, or something. And my question is, to what?
From intentionally or recklessly to knowingly and willfully.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
The gentleman of the 32nd, Douglas Fast.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Would the Majority Leader answer some questions?
Yes.
Lady does yield.
With the Senate's amendment, has there been any change in the enforcement mechanisms of the bill?
No, there has not.
Okay, thank you.
Do any other members wish to speak to adoption of the motion by the lady from the 49th? If not, the question before the House is the motion by the lady from the 49th that the House concur in the Senate amendment and title amendment to House Bill 4007 with further amendment. Those in favor, does the lady wish to close debate on the motion? If not, the question is on that motion. Those in favor of the motion will say aye. Aye. Those opposed will say no. Ayes appear to have it. Ayes do have it. That motion is adopted. The question now then before the House is, shall the bill pass? This is a debatable question. Are there members who wish to speak to passage of the bill as amended? If not, then the question before the House is, shall the bill pass? Those in favor of passage will vote aye. Those opposed will vote no. The clerk will prepare the machine. Has every member voted? If so, the clerk will close the machine and ascertain the result. On this question, there are 92 ayes, 6 nays, and 2 members absent not voting. A majority of members elected having voted in the affirmative, the chair declares the bill passed. The clerk will please report the title.
House Bill 4007.
Are there amendments to the title? If not, then the title is read by the clerk will be and remain the title of the bill. The clerk will please communicate the action of the House to the Senate, request concurrence therein. Next message.
The Senate has passed with amendment committee substitute for House Bill 4058 relating to pharmacy benefit managers.
Message will be received. Lady from the 49th.
Mr. Speaker, I ask unanimous consent that the bill be taken up for immediate consideration.
Lady from the 49th asks unanimous consent that committee substitute for House Bill 4058 be taken up for immediate consideration. Are there objections? None are heard. Lady from the 49th.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The purpose of this bill is to update the law on pharmacy benefit managers to fix technical mistakes within the law. The Senate amendment reinserts stricken language which clarifies that the penalties will be included in the rule. Therefore, Mr. Speaker, I move we concur with the Senate amendment.
The lady from the 49th moves that the House concur in the Senate amendments to committee substitute for House Bill 4058. Are there members who wish to speak to the motion? If not, those in favor of the lady's motion will say aye. Those opposed will say no. The ayes have it. Chair declares the motion adopted. The question now before the House then is the passage of the bill. Shall the bill pass? Are there members who wish to speak to passage of the bill? If not, those in favor of passage of the bill will vote aye. Those opposed will vote no. The clerk will prepare the machine. Has every member voted? No. If so, the clerk will close the machine and ascertain the result. On this question, there are 98 ayes, 0 nays, and 2 members absent not voting. A majority of members elected having voted in the affirmative, the chair declares the bill passed. The clerk will please report the title.
Committee substitute for House Bill 4058.
Are there amendments to the title? If not, the title is read by the clerk, will be and remain the title of the bill. The clerk will please communicate the action of the House to the Senate. Next message.
The Senate has passed without amendment House Bill 4166, prohibiting certain sex offenders from being in a supervisory position over children.
Message to be received.
The Senate has receded from their amendments and passed House Bill 4179, recognition of emergency medical services personnel licensure interstate compact.
Message to be received.
The Senate has passed with amendment and a title amendment committee substitute for House Bill 4275, authorizing Department of Military Affairs and Public Safety promulgate legislative rules relating to the Fire Commission.
Message to be received. Lady from the 49th.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I ask unanimous consent that the bill be taken up for immediate consideration.
Lady from the 49th asks unanimous consent that committee substitute for House Bill 4275 be taken up for immediate consideration. Are there objections? The chair hears no objections and recognizes lady from the 49th.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The purpose of this bill was to amend the State Fire Commission building code rules, specifically the National Electrical Code NFPA 70. The Senate struck the AFCI modification in its entirety. Therefore, Mr. Speaker, I move that the House refuse to concur and request the Senate to recede.
The lady from the 49th moves that the House refuse to concur in the Senate amendments and request that the Senate recede from its position on committee substitute for House Bill 4275. This is a debatable question. Are there members who wish to speak to the motion? If not, those in favor of the motion will say aye. Aye. Those opposed will say no. No. Ayes appear to have it. Ayes do have it. Chair declares that motion adopted. House will please communicate the action of the House to the Senate. Next message.
The Senate has passed without amendment House Bill 4381 relating to lifetime hunting, fishing, and trapping licenses for adopted children.
Message to be received.
The Senate has passed changing the effective date to passage on committee substitute for House Bill 4470 relating to persons 18 years of age or older in the custody of the Bureau of Juvenile Services.
Message to be received. Lady from the 49th.
Mr. Speaker, I ask unanimous consent that the bill be taken up for immediate consideration.
Lady from the 49th asks unanimous consent that committee substitute for House Bill 4470 be taken up for immediate consideration. Are there objections? None are heard. Ladies from the 49th.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move that the bill be effective from passage.
Lady from the 49th moves that committee substitute for House Bill 4470 be made effective from passage. Those in favor of the lady's motion will vote aye. Those opposed will vote no. The clerk will prepare the machine. Has every member voted? If so, the clerk will close the machine and ascertain the result. On this question, there are 98 ayes, 0 nays, and 2 members absent not voting. 2/3 of members elected having voted in the affirmative, the chair declares the bill effective from passage. The clerk will please communicate the action of the House to the Senate. Next message.
The Senate has passed with an amendment and a title amendment on House Bill 4476, providing for the timely and efficient collection, submission, testing, retention, and disposition of forensic evidence in sexual assault cases.
The message will be received. Lady from the 49th.
Mr. Speaker, I ask unanimous consent that the bill be taken up for immediate consideration.
Lady from the 49th asks unanimous consent that House Bill 4476 be taken up for immediate consideration. Are there objections? The chair hears no objection. Lady from the 49th.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The purpose of this bill is to provide for the timely and efficient collection, submission, testing, retention, tracking, and disposition of forensic evidence in sexual assault cases. The Senate amendments clarify language in the bill. Additionally, the bill was amended to change the definition of unfounded to mean evidence developed after reasonable investigation and supported by proper documentation proving no crime occurred or where the alleged victim has recanted. Therefore, Mr. Speaker, I move the House concur with the Senate amendments and title amendments.
The lady from the 49th moves that the House concur in the Senate amendment and title amendment to House Bill 4476. This is a debatable question. Are the members wish to speak to the amendment, to the motion? If not, the question is the adoption of the motion. Those in favor of the lady's motion will say aye. Those opposed will say no. The ayes have it. Chair declares the motion adopted. The question before the House now is passage of the bill as amended by the Senate. Are there members who wish to speak to passage of the bill? If not, the question before the House is, shall the bill pass? Those in favor of passage will vote aye. Those opposed will vote no. The clerk will prepare the machine. Has every member voted? If so, the clerk will close the machine and ascertain the result. On this question, there are 98 ayes, 0 nays, and 2 members absent not voting. A majority of members elected having voted in the affirmative, the chair declares the bill passed. The clerk will please report the title.
House Bill 4476.
Are there amendments to the title? If not, the title is read by the clerk will be and remain the title of the bill. The clerk will please communicate the action of the House to the Senate. Next message.
The Senate has passed committee substitute for Senate Bill 265, authorizing DEP develop reclamation of abandoned and dilapidated properties program.
Message will be received. The bill will be referred to the Committee on Finance.
The Senate has passed committee substitute for Senate Bill 279, requiring dental insurance plans on or assignment made in writing by a person covered.
Message will be received. The bill will be referred to the Committee on Banking and Insurance, then the Committee on Judiciary.
The Senate has passed committee substitute for Senate Bill 306, licensing of drivers utilizing bioptic telescope devices.
The message will be received. The bill will be referred to the Committee on Technology and Infrastructure, then the Committee on Government Organization.
The Senate has concurred in the House and changed the effective date on Senate Bill 310, updating certain terms used in West Virginia Personal Income Tax Act.
Message will be received.
The Senate has passed committee substitute for Senate Bill 490, relating to criminal offenses against agricultural facilities.
The message will be received. The bill will be referred to the Committee on Agriculture and Natural Resources, then the Committee on Judiciary.
The Senate has concurred with a further title amendment and passed committee substitute for Senate Bill 560, permitting nursing home use trained individuals administer medication.
Message will be received. Lady from the 49th.
Mr. Speaker, I ask unanimous consent that the bill be taken up for immediate consideration.
Lady from the 49th asks unanimous consent that the committee substitute for Senate Bill 560 be taken up for immediate consideration. Are there objections? Chair hears no objection. Lady from the 49th.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The Senate amended the title only. Therefore, Mr. Speaker, I move we concur with the Senate title amendment.
The lady from the 49th moves that the House concur in the Senate title amendment to committee substitute for Senate Bill 560. The question is on adoption of the motion. Those in favor of the motion will say aye. Those opposed will say no. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes do have it. Chair declares the title amendment adopted. The question before the House now is, shall the bill pass? Those in favor of passage of the bill with the amended title will vote aye. Those opposed will vote no. The clerk will prepare the machine. Has every member voted? If so, the clerk will close the machine and ascertain the result. On this question, there are 70 ayes, 28 nays, and 2 members absent not voting. Majority of members having voted in the affirmative, the chair declares the bill passed. The clerk will please report the title.
Committee substitute for Senate Bill 560.
Are there further title amendments? If not, the title as amended by the Senate and concurred in by the House will be and remain the title of the bill. The clerk will please communicate the action of the House to the Senate. Next message.
The Senate has passed committee substitute for Senate Bill 589, creating critical needs failing systems sub-account.
Message will be received. The bill will be referred to the Committee on Technology and Infrastructure, then the Committee on Finance.
The Senate has passed committee substitute for Senate Bill 597, relating to judicial branch members' salaries and pensions.
The message will be received. The bill will be referred to the Committee on Finance.
The Senate has passed committee substitute for Senate Bill 702, designating specific grade levels in which nutrition and physical fitness programs are taught.
The message will be received. The bill will be referred to the Committee on Education.
The Senate has passed Senate Bill 703, increasing earning limit for employees who accept separation incentive.
The message will be received and the bill will be referred to the Committee on Education.
The Senate has passed committee substitute for Senate Bill 706, clarifying duties of law enforcement training and certification subcommittee.
The message will be received and the bill will be referred to the Committee on Judiciary.
The Senate has passed Senate Bill 712, correcting name of forensic analysis laboratory.
The message will be received and the bill will be referred to the Committee on Education.
The Senate has passed committee substitute for Senate Bill 746, providing contracted managed care companies access to uniform maternal screening tool.
The message will be received and the bill will be referred to the Committee on Health and Human Resources.
The Senate has adopted Senate Concurrent Resolution 25, requesting study on impact of future electromagnetic pulse catastrophe.
The message will be received and the bill will be referred to the Committee on Government Organization and the Committee on Rules. Are there further messages from the Senate? If not, resolutions.
House Concurrent Resolution 98, Delegate Emily Warden Yeager Memorial Bridge.
Lady of the 49th.
Mr. Speaker, I ask unanimous consent that the further reading of resolutions introduced be dispensed with and that each resolution be considered as formally introduced and referred to the appropriate committees as indicated on the chamber automation system.
The lady from the 49th asks unanimous consent that further reading of resolutions introduced be dispensed with and that each resolution be considered as having been formally introduced and referred to the appropriate committees as shown on the chamber automation system. Are there objections? The chair hears no objection. Petitions, motions, bill. The gentleman of the 17th, Doug Lovejoy, is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'd like to make a motion that the fourth committee reference for House Bill 2321 be dispensed with as improper under Rules 80 and 98 of the House Rules, and that the bill be placed on the calendar for reading a first time.
The chair has not yet ruled on the gentleman's request made earlier. The chair is willing to consider that if the gentleman would prefer to wait till miscellaneous business. Your motion would be in order at that
yes,
time.
Sir. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Okay. Bills introduced. Unfinished business. Bills on third reading.
Senate Bill 620, authorizing Division of Corrections and Rehabilitation, approve home plans for inmates.
The question before the House is, shall the bill pass? Are there objections to having the bill explained in lieu of having it read? The chair hears no objection and recognizes the gentleman from the 27th, Doug Schott, to explain the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Sorry for the delay. I was responding to a text on a relevant issue. This is authorizing the Division of Corrections to approve home plans for inmates. The purpose of the bill is to establish a nonviolent offender parole release plan under the Commissioner of Corrections rather than the parole board. To be eligible, an inmate must first have served the statutory minimum sentence, be also be eligible for parole. Number 3, not serving a sentence for a crime of violence, a controlled substance offense involving actual or threatened violence, a felony involving the use of a firearm, or a felony involving a minor victim. And finally, have completed his or her individualized rehabilitation treatment program. Participants are subject to all rules of parole, and the bill also authorizes the Commissioner to approve home plans. And lastly, it clarifies that one must successfully complete the rehabilitation treatment plan to be eligible for release on parole, but allows for eligibility for release whenever the rehabilitation plan is successfully completed. That's a summary of the bill, Mr. Speaker. I urge its passage.
The question before the House is, shall the bill pass? Are the members who wish to speak to passage of the bill? The gentleman first, Doug McGeehan, is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Will the chair kindly yield to a couple questions?
Yes.
So, someone who's incarcerated, the way I understand it, could receive this authorization from the Division of Corrections to be approved for a home plan instead, and it would have to be strictly a nonviolent offense, though. That's correct?
That is correct.
Am I characterizing it all right?
That is correct. And just perhaps some background would be useful. During the course of a number of our committee meetings, we learned that the parole board is way behind on parole requests and also has a difficult time being fully staffed. So the DMAPS folks felt like in certain situations where individuals were parole eligible, but their parole was delayed due to administrative I guess you'd just say blockades in administrative problems, that it would be appropriate and certainly would be an efficiency, an economic efficiency matter to allow the commissioner to have the authority to commence the parole under certain limited circumstances. So that's the background of the reason for the bill.
Is the parole board or the commissioner of the Division of Corrections, or however this is going to be administered once we would pass this authorization, are they going to be looking at any cases more subjectively and say, well, okay, yeah, this was a nonviolent offense, but this guy was originally charged for property crimes or something like that, but he pled to something else? You know, I mean, I'm just saying, it doesn't appear to me to be very black and white.
Well, of course, probably the Division of Corrections has about the most current and the most complete information on these individuals than anyone else, probably more so than even the parole board, because that information is in the custody of the Division of Corrections before it gets to the parole board. So I'm sure all of those factors would be taken into account, including the fact that the person, their behavior during the time they're incarcerated would be relevant as well.
Okay, so it's your understanding that this would just simply authorize them to allow to take this step, and they will set up some procedures and some other things, circumstance by circumstance, to take into account before they would actually do something. Is that correct?
Yes, it's not mandatory that
Right.
they put people that fall within these categories. These are broad categories that would make these folks eligible, but the final determination would be made by the Division of Corrections.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
Are there other members who wish to speak to passage of the bill? If not, does the gentleman 27th wish to close debate on the bill? The question before the House is, shall the bill pass? Those in favor of passage will vote aye. Those opposed will vote no. The clerk will prepare the machine. Has every member voted? If so, the clerk will close the machine and ascertain the result. On this question, there are 97 ayes, 0 nays, and 3 members absent not voting. Majority of members having voted in the affirmative, the chair declares the bill passed. The clerk will please report the title.
Senate Bill 620.
Are there amendments to the title?
Committee on Judiciary moves to amend the title.
The question before the House is the adoption of the title amendment as just read by the clerk. Those in favor of the title amendment will please say aye. Those opposed will please say no. The ayes have it. Chair declares the title amendment adopted. The title as amended by the House will be and remain the title of the bill. The clerk will please communicate the action of the House to the Senate. Request concurrence therein. Next bill on third reading.
Committee substitute for House Bill 2775, requiring each high school student to complete a full credit course of study in personal finance.
Are there objections to having the bill explained in lieu of having it read? The chair hears no objection and recognizes the gentleman of 27th, Delegate Ellington, to explain the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. What the bill does is it requires that every high school student must complete a one-credit course of study in personal finance as a requirement for high school graduation beginning in the school year 21-22. No other credit may be substituted for personal finance. The coursework must include an end-of-course examination, and the State Board of Education is to develop the standards for the coursework before July 1st, 2021. Mr. Speaker, I urge passage of the bill.
The question before the House is, shall the bill pass? The chair recognizes the gentleman of the first, Delegate McGeehan.
Yeah, would the chair yield for a quick question?
Chairman does yield.
Yes, sir.
This is a mandate, correct?
It is a requirement for graduation starting in 21-22.
Okay, so does this government mandate cover parochial schools and private schools as well?
It does.
Okay, thank you. Speak to the bill, Mr. Speaker.
Yes, the gentleman is recognized to proceed.
Ladies and gentlemen, I've asked this question numerous times to different chairs of the Education Committee in previous sessions, including this one. Does this mandate, yet again, cover private schools and parochial schools? Well, in my district, you know, a large portion of the demographics are Catholic, as am I. I'm an Irish Catholic. There's a lot of Italian Catholics. There's a lot of Greek Catholics. Plenty of Catholics. We got a lot of Catholic schools. I'm tired of the government down here mandating on my Catholic schools what we can and can't learn and what we can and can't teach. There's just something wrong with that. If you follow your history, basically, though, in the early 20th century, if you look back long enough, part of the momentum and rise of public education was to try to squeeze out Catholic schools. Go back and look at the early 20th century history of the rise of the progressive movement and part of that push for more and more public schools to take the place of private and Catholic schools. So I, for one, am tired of centralized mandates from this body being forced on my constituents in the Northern Panhandle, who often choose, rightfully so, to follow their faith and educate their children in the Roman Catholic way. And that goes for private schools as well. So if you want to mandate from the state school board or from this body on the public school system, which I don't really think is the right way either, because we should have some sort of local control, even though local control has been completely decimated by now. And of course, we always think it's great if we mandate things like Freedom Week. The Federalist Papers, yeah, okay, we can't vote against that because then you're not American, right? Or the Emancipation Proclamation. Find it funny, we've never mandated the Anti-Federalist Papers, by the way. If you ever read the Anti-Federalist Papers, Patrick Henry and those guys, they were far more prophetic. Haven't mandated those. And also I want to say, some of the times we're mandating these things, the people that push these bills mandating what our kids have to learn, they've never even read them themselves. I guarantee that some of the people in here mandating the Federalist Papers be learned during Freedom Week, which, as one of the gentlemen over across the aisle pointed out, that was pretty contradictory. Mandating some sort of centralized mandate during Freedom Week. I guarantee you they've never even read these things. So it's a little absurd to keep with this. But the main point is, if you want to go ahead with your mandates and keep pushing these centralized mandates on the entire school system, don't get up and stand and make an argument all of a sudden for local control. Just give me a little bit of consistency in this body. I mean, one thing that bothers me is I hear one delegate stand up on one issue and speak, and then maybe 2 issues later, that same delegate will stand up and contradict conceptually the argument he just made 10 minutes ago. It's absurd. So just lay off my private schools and Catholic schools in the Northern Panhandle and give me some local education up there. My county's named after John Hancock. Guess what? John Hancock, what do you think he told the British king? Well, his name's real big. It wasn't like he was saying some sort of nicety in a symbolic way to the king. So lay off with the mandates. If you want to say and preach local control, then don't just give it lip service. Put it into action. I'm a no.
The gentleman 27th, Doug Ellington.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Great speech. I misspoke. The original part of the code did have public-private schools. This part is only public schools. So.
The gentleman 55th, Douglas Sponagle.
Will the chairman yield for a question?
Yes, sir.
Over here.
Okay, yeah, I see you in the corner there.
Hey, question for you. You said the effective date's 21-22 for this?
Yes.
Why is it going to take 102 years to implement this?
2021 to 2022.
I'm messing with
Not
you,
100
Chair.
years.
I'm
I know you
messing
are.
with
No, they already have embedded information throughout different coursework. They're just going to have to formulate a curriculum to put it all back together.
And you're separating it out to make it its own course?
Right. So, we don't need personal finance until another 100 years.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
The gentleman from the 43rd, Douglas Thompson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Speak to the bill?
Yes, gentleman's recognized. Proceed.
This is a really good bill, guys. This is a really good bill because I already teach civics, and then part of the CSOs for civics is personal finance. However, we're seeing with students now that they're not getting personal finance at the level they really need to get. And also this would allow us to focus more on government and civics in a civics course, and by not reducing the requirements for social studies or math, we're saving those courses, and I think that our students deserve to know how to balance a checkbook. Our students deserve to know about APRs. Our students need to know about how to do your taxes and file. So this is a very good bill, and I wholly support its passage.
Are there other members who wish to speak to passage of the bill? Does the gentleman at 27th wish to close debate on the bill? If not, then the question before the House is, shall the bill pass? Those in favor of passage of the bill will vote aye. Those opposed will vote no. The clerk will prepare the machine. Has every member voted? If so, the clerk will close the machine and ascertain the result on this question. There are 89 ayes, 8 nays, and 3 members absent not voting. A majority of members having voted in the affirmative, the chair declares the bill passed. The clerk will please report the title.
Committee Substitute for House Bill 2775.
Are there amendments to the title? If not, then the title is read by the clerk will be and remain the title of the bill. The clerk will please communicate the action of the House to the Senate, request concurrence therein. Next bill on third reading.
Committee Substitute for House Bill 4092 relating to foster care.
The question before the House is, shall the bill pass? Are there objections to having the bill explained in lieu of having it read? The chair hears no objection and recognizes the gentleman at 28th, Douglas Pack, to explain the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This is our foster care bill, House Bill 4092. This bill establishes the Foster Children's Bill of Rights along with the Foster Parents and Kinship Bill of Rights. The rights shall be implemented by the Foster Care Ombudsman. Foster Children Bill of Rights and Foster Parent Bill of Rights are designed to inform foster children and foster parents of their rights within the child welfare system. Violation of these rights shall be investigated by the Foster Care Ombudsman as was put forth in the Foster Care Ombudsman legislation. The reasonable and prudent parent standard is discussed further. Specifically, factors are set forth which the foster parent shall consider when permitting certain actions of a foster child. 14 states have codified the requirement that foster parents use a reasonable and prudent parenting standard, particularly when making decisions regarding foster children's participation in extracurricular and other activities. A rebuttable presumption is established that the foster parent acted as a reasonable and prudent parent. A limitation of liability is provided for if the caregivers act as a reasonable and prudent parent. $16.9 million is added to the foster care system. DHHR's contact with child placing agencies will require a minimum of $75 per day, with 40% of that required to go to foster parents. Certified kinship placement shall receive $900 a month per child. An adoption bonus of $1,000 is added for each finalized adoption to the child placement agency. Finally, the bill codifies the report the guardian ad litem is required to provide to the court. Mr. Speaker, that's a summary of the bill, and I urge its passage.
The question before the House is, shall the bill pass? Are there members who wish to speak to passage of the bill? The gentleman, the 58th, Douglas Coles.
Mr. Speaker, my wife and I are adoptive foster parents, and we have a direct financial benefit in this bill, and I ask to be excused from voting under Rule 49.
Yes, under the facts as the gentleman has relayed them to the chair, the gentleman is a potential recipient of funding that would be authorized under this bill. The chair suspects other members would be similarly situated. At this time, the chair would ask any member who is similarly situated and wishes a ruling by the chair under Rule 49 to raise one hand. The clerk will please note the members who are seeking recognition at this time. There are no lights on at this time. The chair would ask those members who wish to have their ruling under Rule 49 to be issued by the chair to please press your light to have your identity recorded by the clerk. Okay. All members who have sought a ruling by the chair under Rule 49 on this bill on the factual basis that you are potentially a recipient of funding to be directed by this bill, it would be the ruling by the chair that all members seeking such a ruling are members of a class of greater than 5 and therefore would be directed to vote. Are there other members who wish to speak to passage of the bill? The gentleman from the 59th, Doug Kump.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Just briefly, as an adoptive parent myself and as a child of a parent who was adopted, I'm very much in favor of this bill.
The gentleman from the 58th, Doug Coles.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Speaker. I just want to say a little bit that outside of the fact of the financial part of this bill, there are good things in this bill, and I want to say how much I appreciate some of those things. The Foster Child's Bill of Rights, if you take a minute and look at that, that's important stuff. The Foster Parents' Bill of Rights, outstanding stuff to finally put in code. And the Ombudsman program, I think that's going to work out well. But there is a level of support that's needed for foster parents in West Virginia, and this goes a long way to covering some of those things. There's a level of support that's needed for foster children in this state, and this goes a long way to saying we want to support those things, even without the money in it, Mr. Speaker. So I certainly support the bill. I appreciate the effort that's been put forth with it. The money's an important part of it, but it's not all of it. There are other critical parts of this. Foster parents want to be supported. They want to be part of the team. They want to be recognized. They want to be included. And, I think it's important to say that in code. And I urge support of the bill. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The gentleman, the 61st, Doug Barrett.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. House Bill 4092 comes to us today on the floor out of the Finance Committee, fully intact, just the way it came out of the Health Committee and the Judiciary Committee. And it's fully intact because foster families have flooded our emails and our voicemails and even took the time to come here and meet with legislators. As I've said before, our foster families in West Virginia are truly angels among us. The bill is also intact because employees of child placement agencies have taken the time to advocate and educate here at the Capitol. These folks work tirelessly and oftentimes thanklessly for the well-being of the children of our state. They respond to crisis situations at all hours of the day and night. They carry the heavy emotional burden of witnessing horrendous conditions that most of us cannot fathom. House Bill 4092 will establish a Bill of Rights for foster children and a Bill of Rights for foster and kinship parents. This will give children and parents within our foster system a voice in decision-making and legal proceedings, ensuring that they are respected, considered, and included throughout the foster process. House Bill 4092 will also provide an increase to the daily rate paid to foster agencies and families. This will allow our agencies to expand their recruitment, training, and support services while providing foster families a much-needed financial boost. Great emphasis has been placed on the projected cost of this bill, but we must acknowledge that this is an investment in West Virginia children. With these necessary increases, agencies will be able to recruit and retain more foster families, leading to less children placed out of state or in higher levels of care than necessary. These improvements over time will save hundreds of thousands of dollars a month. With more than 7,000 children in our foster care system and more than 2,800 of them without a home placement, we simply cannot afford to not act on this crisis. This bill, House Bill 4092, puts West Virginians first. More specifically, it puts West Virginia children first. Mr. Speaker, I urge passage.
The lady in the 4th, Doug Zukoff.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
I rise also in support of this bill. My colleagues have eloquently talked about the bill already and the reasons why it's important. I also want to thank the leadership for reaching across the aisle and allowing those of us who are very much have a passion for the foster care system to be participatory in the bill. We appreciate that very much. I also want to thank you all for consideration that we gave to the kinship families. The amendments that came in the bill during committee are the grandparents across the state, the aunts and uncles, the relatives that step up to the plate that may not have the income necessary to help take care of these children. And the money that they receive at this time is just not adequate to help support them in the way that they need to be supported. So I'm really excited about this. I would urge everyone to vote for this bill, and I really appreciate the bipartisan manner in which this was accomplished. Thank you, everyone.
The gentleman of the 30th, Doug Bates. The gentleman of the 1st, Doug McGeehan.
Fiscal note. Is there a fiscal note on this? Where's the chair at? Yeah. Can you? I'm looking at I think it's a fiscal note. How much is this going to cost? Do you know?
The state share is $16.9 million.
16 million increased.
I'm sorry.
$16 million.
16.9, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Gentleman of the 30th, Doug Bates.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. With the Chair of Finance yield?
Yes.
Just to follow up on that, for the benefit of the body, and I do want to express my appreciation to you and the other members of the Finance Committee working with us to get answers to the questions that we asked of the Department with regard to their current and ongoing levels of foster care funding, as well as the updated fiscal note that's on the system. The gentleman indicated that it's $16 million worth of state funds. There's also federal funds that will pour into this program as well. Is that correct?
You're correct, yes.
And that's in the tune of $30 million. Is that correct?
Exactly, yes.
So our investment of $16 million in these families and these children will bring in an additional $14 million worth of federal money to support these programs.
Correct.
Okay. I speak to the bill if I can. Thank you, sir.
Yes, gentleman's recognized.
This bill has a number of good policy things, but it also has a significant financial piece. And I want us all to be aware of the fact that this is the first big nut that we're going to send across to the Senate. And I very much appreciate the chairman looking at his budget and plan on working with him and everybody else in this body to make sure that this important program to us all is adequately funded if the Senate intends to do something else with the money. So we've done good work here, but the job is not done. So we need to defend our policy, but we also need to defend our decision to make sure that our funding for this problem and the money that goes to these children and families is taken care of in the context of our overall budget. So I thank the chairman and the other members of the Finance Committee and ask the body stand with us all when this bill comes back from the Senate. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Are there other members who wish to be recognized on passage of this bill? If not, does the gentleman with 28th Douglas Pack wish to close debate? If not, the question before the House then is, shall the bill pass? Those in favor of passage will vote aye. Those opposed will vote no. The clerk will prepare the machine. Has every member voted? If so, the clerk will close the machine and ascertain the result. On the question, there are 96 ayes, 1 nay, and 3 members absent not voting. A majority having voted in the affirmative, the chair declares the bill passed. The clerk will please report the title.
Committee substitute for House Bill 4092.
Are there amendments to the title? If not, the title is read by the clerk will be and remain the title of the bill. The clerk will please communicate the action to the House and the Senate. Request concurrence therein. Next bill on third reading.
Committee substitute for House Bill 4165, West Virginia Remembers Program.
Question before the House is, shall the bill pass? Are there objections to having the bill explained in lieu of having it read? The chair hears no objection and recognizes the gentleman of the 13th, Doug Higginbotham, to explain the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. House Bill 4165 creates the West Virginia Remembers Program. The bill creates a voluntary program through which veterans may share their military service experience in an educational setting in the public schools. Participation is voluntary for classroom teachers and veterans. Additionally, the State Board of Education is authorized to promulgate legislative rules regarding soliciting speakers and maintaining lists of speakers. That is the bill, Mr. Speaker, and I will take questions if needed.
The question before the House is, shall the bill pass? The gentleman, the 60th, Douglas Wilson, is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Would the gentleman please yield?
Certainly.
What prohibition is there against doing this now?
Currently none. However, there are counties who do not feel comfortable doing this without it being explicitly written in code.
Fascinating. Thank you, sir. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Are there other members who wish to speak to passage of the bill? If not, then the question before the House is, shall the bill pass? Those in favor of passage will vote aye. Those opposed will vote no. The clerk will prepare the machine. Has every member voted? If so, the clerk will close the machine and ascertain the result on this question. There are 94 ayes, 3 nays, and 3 members absent not voting. A majority of members having voted in the affirmative, the chair declares the bill passed. The clerk will please report the title.
Committee substitute for House Bill 4165.
Are there amendments to the title? If not, the title is read by the clerk will be and remain the title of the bill. The clerk will please communicate the action of the House to the Senate. Request concurrence therein. Next bill on third reading.
House Bill 4519, establishing a summer youth intern pilot program within Department of Commerce.
The question before the House is, shall the bill pass? Are there objections to having the bill explained in lieu of having it read? The chair hears no objection and recognizes the gentleman from the 27th, Delegate Ellington, to explain the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. What this bill does is establishes a summer youth intern pilot program in the Department of Commerce for high school students. The internships are to be primarily in high-demand occupational areas. Subject to potential appropriations, the department may award grants on a competitive basis to employers to assist them with the costs of the summer internships. The bill also includes frameworks that county boards and schools may use, but are not required to use. For example, they can engage local stakeholders in a shared vision of the knowledge, college, and career skills and life characteristics that a future-ready graduate will need for success in occupations and entrepreneurship. Also, building strategic partnerships to provide activities such as guest speakers, demonstrations, hands-on creative projects, workplace visits, and internships at the appropriate grade levels that instill within students an awareness of the challenging world of work and the knowledge, skills, and characteristics needed for success in occupations and entrepreneurship. Mr. Speaker, I urge passage of the bill.
The question before the House is, shall the bill pass? The gentleman at 36, Douglas Robinson, is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Will the chairman yield?
Chairman does yield.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This the second part here refers to 1827D. Is that the same? That's the same section we worked on the other day, a bill you presented, correct?
It may be. I think you pulled out section 2520 on the policy.
Mm-hmm. Yes, sir. So that's the same section the other bill affected? And we're going to go back, and this is just an addition to that, correct?
70. The other one was 7E. This is 7C, I believe. Well, this is 7E. The last one you had was 7C.
Yeah, you're close. You had it. So this, it goes in and allows for that program that we set up the other day, or that we recommend. This allows for them to do visits on site and speakers, to invite people in and do just work-ready things to get them ready for the workforce after graduation.
That is for high school students. The one that we had before was middle school.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, the gentleman is recognized to proceed.
I completely encourage the body to vote for this bill. It provides flexibility to the schools so they can do this. It adds on to the bill, similar to an amendment we had, that it adds these parameters to that, and I encourage the body to support it. Thank you.
Are there other members who wish to speak to passage of the bill? Does the gentleman wish to close debate on the bill? If not, then the question before the House is, shall the bill pass? Those in favor of passage will vote aye. Those opposed will vote no. The clerk will prepare the machine. Has every member voted? If so, the clerk will close the machine and ascertain the result on this question. There are 95 ayes, 2 nays, and 3 members absent not voting. Majority of members having voted in the affirmative, the chair declares the bill passed. The clerk will please report the title.
House Bill 4519.
Are there amendments to the title? If not, then the title is read by the clerk will be and remain the title of the bill. The clerk will please communicate the action of the House to the Senate. Request concurrence therein. Next bill on third reading.
Committee substitute for House Bill 4621, West Virginia FinTech Regulatory Sandbox Act.
The question before the House is, shall the bill pass? Are there objections to having the bill explained in lieu of having it read? Chair hears no objection and recognizes the gentleman of 35th, Doug Capito, to explain the bill.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker, and good afternoon, everybody. The bill before you creates a FinTech regulatory sandbox. Sounds a little bit mysterious, so I'd like to explain a little bit, go over the details of the bill, and be happy to answer questions. Currently, 4 states are actively participating in the FinTech world with sandboxes of their own. And what occurs in a sandbox is it allows companies to apply for limited exemptions from licensing and certain regulations required in order to test an innovative product. And in this space, we're specifically talking about banking products or products that relate to financial institutions. And I just want to provide some examples of some products that are being tested currently in Arizona. One deals with an income sharing agreement as an alternative to personal loans, a cheaper money transfer system for those that are currently unbanked, and faster and cheaper payment processing systems to help those that are unbanked and underbanked. The purpose of this bill is to actually decrease regulation for entrepreneurs to be able to come into West Virginia and test innovative product. This is an entrepreneurship bill. This is a bill that puts West Virginia in the forefront of the race toward being innovative, which I find very encouraging. And the goal is obviously to provide a better banking experience for all West Virginians. I'm very proud on this bill to say that we've had immense collaboration from all of the stakeholders, brought everybody to the table, from those in the banking industry, those in the FinTech industry, and those in the consumer protection industry, to come up with a bill that was able to come through committee unanimously and is before you today. So this bill, again, as I stated, creates the regulatory sandbox program, and it's to be administered by the Division of Financial Institutions, as I'll refer to as DFI, and again allows them to obtain limited market access to test an innovative product or service without obtaining a license or other authorization that might otherwise be required. There's a $1,000 application fee. The applicant must have a physical location in the state of West Virginia, and they're permitted to participate in the sandbox for up to 24 months in the first application. The participants are not subject to state laws that regulate financial products or services, but are subject, of course, to the West Virginia Consumer Credit and Protection Act. They are required to post a bond, a consumer protection bond, to protect those consumers of the innovative product. That bond shall not be less than $5,000 and may be increased based on the discretion of the DFI. The bill requires DFI to report annually to the legislature regarding regarding the status of the program and provide recommendations regarding the effectiveness of the program. Mr. Speaker, this is a great entrepreneurship and innovation bill, and I urge its passage. I'm happy to take questions.
The question before the House is, shall the bill pass? The gentleman of the 60th, Doug Wilson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Would the gentleman please yield?
Sure.
Is my assumption that the term sandbox refers to a limited test bed? Is that accurate?
That's accurate.
Thank you, sir. Does this create any new bureaucracy?
No. It's housed within a current one.
Excellent. Last question. Why have we chosen to limit the scope of it to a certain industry?
To the gentleman, it would be my desire to open this up to every industry. We actually did look at a sandbox program that dealt with insurance companies this year. That bill didn't make it all the way to committee. Unfortunately, I think there were some concerns there. It would be my desire to open this up to all industries, but I think this is a great starting point. This is a great point to get West Virginia in the door, and hopefully many, many industries will follow.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Are there other members who wish to speak to passage of the bill? If the lady from the 36th, Doug East at Burton.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'm going to request a Rule 49 because I do work for a very large financial institution.
Yes, as the lady has relayed the factual circumstances of her employment to the chair, it would be the ruling of the chair that the lady would be a member of a class of greater than 5 and therefore would be entitled to vote. If there are no other members who wish to speak to passage of the bill, the question before the House is, shall the bill pass? Those in favor of passage will vote aye. Those opposed will vote no. The clerk will prepare the machine. Has every member voted? If so, the clerk will close the machine and ascertain the result on this question. There are 97 ayes, 0 nays, and 3 members absent not voting. A majority of members having voted in the affirmative, the chair declares the bill passed. The clerk will please report the title.
Committee substitute for House Bill 4621.
Are there amendments to the title? If not, the title is read by the clerk will be and remain the title of the bill. The clerk will please communicate the action of the House to the Senate. Request concurrence therein. Next bill on third reading.
Committee substitute for House Bill 4633, expanding county commissioners' ability to dispose of county or district property.
The question before the House is, shall the bill pass? Are there objections to having the bill explained in lieu of having it read? The chair hears no objection and recognizes Lady from the 3rd, Delegate Storch, to explain the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The purpose of this bill is to expand the County Commission's ability to dispose of county or district property to a nonprofit, community, or senior center organization without conducting a public sale. I urge passage.
The question before the House is, shall the bill pass? Are there members who wish to speak to passage of the bill? If not, then those in favor of passage will vote aye. Those opposed will vote no. The clerk will prepare the machine. Has every member voted? If so, the clerk will close the machine and ascertain the result. On this question, there are 88 ayes, 8 nays, and 4 members absent not voting. A majority of members having voted in the affirmative, the chair declares the bill passed. The clerk will please report the title.
Committee substitute for House Bill 4633.
Are there amendments to the title? If not, then the title is read by the clerk will be and remain the title of the bill. The clerk will please communicate the action of the House to the Senate. Request concurrence therein. Next bill on third reading.
Committee substitute for House Bill 4729, requiring higher education institutions to use previous versions or additions of instructional materials.
The question before the House is, shall the bill pass? Are there objections to having the bill explained in lieu of having it read? The chair hears no objection and recognizes the gentleman from the 27th, Delegate Ellington, to explain the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This is a committee substitute to the bill, and it requires that institutional governing boards to establish or continue an educational materials affordability committee. That the committee consists of faculty, students, administrators, and also bookstore representatives. The purpose of the committee, shall make recommendations to the governing board of the schools that ensure that bookstores operated at their institutions under its jurisdiction minimize the cost to the students of purchasing educational materials. Also ensure that there is appropriate high-quality course educational materials that are selected by the course instructors. It encourages and incentivizes the use of previous or older versions of basic educational materials to the extent that those older versions are available and less costly to the students and remain relevant with high-quality educational materials with up-to-date information and content. It also requires the repurchase and resale of educational materials on an institutional basis. It provides the use of certain basic educational materials for a reasonable number of years. It encourages and incentivizes the use of emergent technologies such as electronic textbooks, online textbooks, print-on-demand services, and other open resource materials. It also prohibits employees from profiteering by requiring the purchase of one-time use materials or receiving payments or other consideration as an inducement to require students to purchase particular textbooks. The committee substitute also adds what the word educational materials means throughout the bill, and that stands as textbooks and other supplementary course materials that come at a cost to the student regardless of the format. Mr. Speaker, I urge passage of this bill.
The question before the House is, shall the bill pass? Are there members who wish to speak to passage of the bill? The gentleman, the 44th, Delegate Hanna.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I just request a Rule 49 for the situation we discussed earlier.
Yes, under the facts as relayed to the chair by the gentleman, you would potentially be impacted by the mandate on educational resources in this bill. It would be the ruling of the chair that you would be a member of a class of greater than 5 individuals similarly situated, and therefore you should be directed to vote on this question. If there are no other members wishing to speak on the passage of this bill, the question before the House is, shall the bill pass? Those in favor of passage will vote aye. Those opposed will vote no. The clerk will prepare the machine. Has every member voted? If so, the clerk will close the machine and ascertain the result. On this question, there are 96 ayes, 0 nays, and 4 members absent not voting. A majority of members having voted in the affirmative, the chair declares the bill passed. The clerk will please report the title.
Committee substitute for House Bill 4729.
Are there amendments to the title? If not, the title is read by the clerk will be and remain the title of the bill. The clerk will please communicate the action to the House. The Senate requests concurrence therein. Are there further bills on third reading? Bills on second reading.
Committee substitute for House Bill 2028.
Are there amendments?
No. Limiting supervision of laying of taxes on state rights of way.
Are there amendments?
Delegates Scaff, Byrd, and Fast move to amend the bill on page 1, section 9B on line 1 at the beginning of the sentence by
Does the gentleman
insert.
from the 35th, Douglas Scaff, seek recognition to explain the amendment in lieu of having it read?
Yes, sir.
Are there objections? None are heard. The gentleman may proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and good afternoon, everyone. I am pinch hitting for my colleague from the 35th, Delegate Byrd. This was his brainchild, so if you have any questions, feel free to text him as he leaves. Quite simply, this bill has to do with the public service districts laying of water and sewer lines. And all this amendment does, quite simply, is say that those, before they lay those lines, they notify the municipalities that this is going to be done and performed, and it gives the cities and towns a chance to lay fiber optic lines and put a broadband lines or cable in there at the same time, saving all the municipalities money and construction costs. I urge adoption.
The question before the House is the adoption of the amendment as just explained by the gentleman of the 35th. The gentleman of the 56th, Douglas Howe.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. We think that this amendment strengthens the bill, and I urge the adoption.
The gentleman of the 13th, Douglas Cadle.
Yes, will the gentleman from Charleston yield?
Gentleman does yield.
Sure. I got a question about this. A lot of times they don't allow, say, a water line on a sewer line. They have to be 10 feet apart. I'm not sure if there's any kind of regulations on fiber optic next to a water line or sewer line or whatever. Did you do any research on that?
I personally did not, but I think basically all this is doing is notifying the city that it's going to happen, give them a chance to do their due diligence, see what type of, sometimes they may not lay the fiber optic, they just might line the, you know, the tubing that they could put fiber optic later.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Do other members wish to speak to the adoption of the amendment? If not, then the question before the House is on the adoption of the amendment. Those in favor of the amendment will say aye. Those opposed will say no. The ayes have it, and that amendment is adopted. Are there further amendments? If not, the bill will be advanced to third reading. Next bill on second reading.
Committee substitute for House Bill 2663, exempting buildings or structures utilized exclusively for agricultural purposes from the provisions of the State Building Code.
Are there amendments? No. If not, the bill will be advanced.
Committee substitute for House Bill 4099, eliminating the permit for shampoo assistant.
Are there amendments? No. If not, the bill will be advanced.
House Bill 4450, relating to instruction permits issued by the Division of Motor Vehicles.
Are there amendments? If not, the bill will be advanced.
House Bill 4499, relating to multi-county trail network authorities.
Are there amendments? If not, the bill will be advanced.
House Bill 4504, relating to renewal application requirements for individuals with permanent disabilities.
Are there amendments? If not, the bill will be advanced.
Committee substitute for House Bill 4537, permitting DNR to issue up to 100 permits for boats greater than 10 horsepower on Upper Mud River Lake.
Are there amendments? If not, the bill will be advanced.
Committee substitute for House Bill 4543, relating to insurance coverage for diabetics.
Are there amendments? If not, the bill will be advanced.
Committee substitute for House Bill 4620, redefining definition of recovery residence.
Are there amendments?
Delegates Hill and Rohrbach move to amend the bill on page 1 by striking 1659-1 from the bill.
The question before the House is the adoption of the amendment as just read by the clerk. The gentleman of the 41st, Douglas Hill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This amendment is technical. It eliminates a duplicative section in the bill, and I urge adoption.
The question before the House is the adoption of the amendment as just read by the clerk. Are there members who wish to speak to the adoption of the amendment? If not, those in favor of adoption of the amendment will say aye. Those opposed will say no. The ayes have it. Chair declares the amendment adopted. Are there further amendments? If not, the bill will be advanced to third reading.
House Bill 4714, increasing the monetary threshold for requiring nonprofit organizations to register as a charitable organization.
Are there amendments? If not, the bill will be advanced.
Committee substitute for House Bill 4734, rewriting the article on registered professional nurses.
Are there amendments?
Delegate Wilson moves to amend the bill on page 8, section 6, line 10 by striking out the entire subsection and inserting in lieu thereof the following. 7, collect a voluntary donation not to exceed $10 per license per year. The voluntary donation is to be used to fund the Center for Nursing and to carry out its purposes as set forth in 37B1. That's sec of this code.
The question before the House is the adoption of the amendment as just read by the clerk. The gentleman of the 60th, Douglas Wilson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The original bill mandates a $10 fee for the license. I simply want to make it voluntary. Thank you, sir.
Lady in the 49th, Douglas Summers.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. While I realize I'm part of a class of around 30,000 people that will benefit from this amendment, I did want to request a Rule 49.
Would be the ruling of the chair that 30,000 exceeds 5, and therefore the lady would be directed to vote. The gentleman of the 28th, Douglas Pack.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I stand in support of the gentleman's amendment, and I would urge its adoption.
Are there other members who wish to speak to adoption of the amendment? If not, those in favor of the amendment will say aye. Those opposed will say no. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes do have it. Chair declares that amendment adopted. Are there further amendments? If not, the bill will be advanced to third reading. Next bill on second reading.
Committee substitute for House Bill 4773, creating a work group to investigate and recommend screening protocols for adverse childhood trauma in this state.
Are there amendments?
Delegate Summers moves to amend the bill on page 1, section 1, line 1.
Does the lady from the 49th ask unanimous consent to explain the amendment in lieu of having it read?
Yes, Mr. Speaker.
Are there objections? Chair hears no objection. Lady may proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The purpose of this bill is to develop a screening protocol for adverse trauma in children by a work group led by the Commissioner of Public Health. And as you saw on your desk, I put out some information for you that you can read about adverse trauma that's been studied already. Therefore, my amendment does three things. It makes the work group permissive instead of mandatory. There is a huge body of knowledge already on this subject. It's been around since 1998. And I'm a little bit concerned making it mandatory because of the foster care crisis that we're having and the limited resources with DHHR. The other two things it does is it rewords the legislative findings to make any findings part of the state opioid response plan, but removes the part where it talks about creating incentives for healthcare providers. And the last thing is it does is it removes the words calling for consideration of standard of care protocols. It is not recommended by the American Academy of Pediatrics that you develop standards of care related to ACEs. I urge its passage.
The question before the House is the amendment. Are there other members who wish to speak to the adoption of the amendment? The lady from the 4th, Douglas Zukoff, is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'm not in opposition to this bill, to this amendment. I understand the reasoning that the Majority Leader has about this, but we have several things that are noted. There are many people in the state, even though it's been around for a long time, both practitioners and teachers, folks across the board that are not aware of ACEs. And I think that we were just trying to make sure that we get there with this bill to bring awareness. Even folks in the pediatric this is relatively new, and we have folks in pediatrics who have said that their own folks are not aware of this as they should be. I also think that some of the changes where the change in the amendment talks about it being inclusive in the opioid response, and it's already in there in page 8 on a broad section of that opioid response. And finally, the primary care folks that we worked with, in addition to the whole group of people that we worked with, were also wanting to have the broader community included in community-based programs included in this effort, and this amendment does strike that out. But I just bring those to your attention. I am not in opposition to the amendment. Thank you.
The gentleman 28th, Dr. Pack.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. For the reasons that the Majority Leader pointed out, I would stand in support of the lady's amendment. Thank you.
The gentleman 36th, Dr. Robinson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Would the Majority Leader yield?
Yes, I will.
Madam Majority Leader, my understanding of the bill was it basically creates a commission to study this and put together parameters, and then your amendment makes that permissive. Can you explain to me which part that you're changing from shall to may and what parts those are?
If you look in the system, it has all the different words that were shall that are now may, and changing it then from a government mandate to permissive if the time allows for the DHHR to take away and form this committee and run this committee.
So it makes the whole committee permissive?
Yes, it does.
So the DHHR can decide whether or not to do this?
Yes, and I will note in the bill there is also a coalition that let me find it for you so I can tell you exactly. There is a Adverse Childhood Experiences Coalition of West Virginia. They could take this on themselves if they would like and form that commission.
So your suggestion is the outside entity take care of this rather than the state take it on?
I am a little bit concerned about overtaxing DHHR when we're having a foster care crisis.
Okay. Speak to the amendment, Mr. Speaker.
Yes, the gentleman is recognized.
I understand the Majority Leader's concerns. I think we have, over the years, especially leading up to the last 5 or 10 years, maybe we're doing a little bit better, but we've done a poor job of addressing our mental health needs, especially for our children. If you look at our response to the drug epidemic, and if you notice we say drug epidemic rather than opioid epidemic, this is an issue that's been ongoing for a long time. And when you get back and you study these issues, they base themselves in experiences and events that have happened in a child's early childhood, somewhere between that 1 year to 12 years and sometimes a little further. And if we can find a way to address that or measure those issues, we can treat them much better. And I understand the Majority Leader's concerns that this may be a overbearing issue for DHHR, but I'd like to point out to you that DHHR's budget is over $1 billion a year. They have, if this is the straw that broke the camel's back, I would be very, very surprised. DHHR has a enormous caseload of issues, and if a small commission to try to build evaluations to see if we can treat our children's adverse experiences in a better way is what makes DHHR fall apart, I'd be very surprised. I would urge the body to reject the amendment and build upon the events that we know have happened, that the events that we know are causing children and adults to go into lives of addiction and other issues. So I would urge the body to reject the amendment. Thank you.
Are there other members who wish to speak to the amendment? The gentleman, the 37th, Dr. Pushkin.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. First, I would just like to commend the bipartisan group of sponsors on this legislation, and also really wish there had been more of us from the House that had attended these public health caucuses that we've been holding on Wednesday mornings over in the Senate. And the main topic that has come up in every single meeting that we've had with the Dean of the School of Public Health for WVU, folks from Marshall, the Commissioner for the Bureau for Public Health, is that this is the issue that affects all other issues in our state, that affects every negative public health crisis we have in this state, are these adverse childhood experiences. And it is part of the state's opioid response plan that just came out. We just got copies of it. It's in there to address this. So I applaud the lead sponsor and everybody else who signed on to this bill, and everybody who I know is going to support this bill, because this is really getting to the root of the problem. So we quit throwing tax dollars at the tail end of the problem. But what the amendment does is it really takes the teeth out of the bill, and it makes it so it doesn't really have to happen. And incorrectly states that or assumes that it's not part of the state's opioid response plan, when it is. It is. So I would strongly urge rejection of the amendment, and let's pass a bill that really addresses the issue that affects every single other issue that we deal with. Thank you.
Are there any other members who wish to speak to the amendment? Lady in the 49th, Delegate Summers.
Just to close on the amendment, Mr. Speaker.
Ladies recognized to proceed.
Okay, I just wanted to clarify something about the state opioid plan. If you would read the amendment in the system, it says may be a part of the state opioid plan. That's what's in the bill. I was deleting the language after that sentence that says that we would want to promote we would want to offer an incentive to healthcare providers. That was the part that I deleted. But, Mr. Speaker, one thing I would like to say as well, and the reason I gave you all the information is because in the ACEs questionnaire, where they asked children about things that they've been exposed to, there are 10 questions that they ask. They ask if the child's been exposed to physical abuse, verbal abuse, sexual abuse, emotional neglect. They ask about parents' information. Are they an alcoholic? Is there domestic violence? Along those lines. What they don't ask is, have you been exposed to racism, bullying? Have you seen a sibling be abused? Have you lost a caregiver? Are you homeless? Are you surviving and recovering from a severe addiction in your family? There's so many more questions, and all of these really have to do with a child's mental health. And that's why I'm wanting to make this permissive, because I think the focus of the children's mental health is much more broader than these 10 questions. Thank you.
Ladies, close debate on the amendment. The question before the House is the adoption of the amendment. Those in favor of the amendment will say aye. Aye. Those opposed will say no. No. Ayes appear to have it. Ayes have it. Chair declares that amendment adopted. Are there further amendments?
Delegate Pushkin moves to amend the bill on page 3, section 1, line 59 by striking out the word and on page 3, section 1, line 61 by striking out the period and inserting in lieu thereof the following. 23. One member chosen by the West Virginia chapter of the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People.
The question before the House is the adoption of the amendment as just read by the clerk. The gentleman 37th, Delegate Pushkin, is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The amendment is fairly self-explanatory, but in crafting this legislation, I know that the Commissioner for the Bureau for Public Health came over and worked with the lead sponsor on this to come up with who would be members of this board. And it happened, it was right before it went up on the agenda for the committee, and after looking at it, I felt that we should also add a representative chosen by the state chapter of the NAACP, because what we've seen and learned from our meetings that the adverse childhood experiences unfortunately disproportionately affect minority children, and I think it would be helpful to have a representative of that organization, and I strongly urge adoption.
The question before the House is the adoption of the amendment. The gentleman at 28th, Delegate Pack.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. In light of the amendment that we just passed, on top of the fact that I think the gentleman's idea is a good idea, I would urge adoption of the gentleman's amendment.
Are there other members who wish to speak to adoption of the amendment? If not, those in favor of adoption of the amendment will say aye. Those opposed will say no. The ayes have it. Chair declares that amendment adopted. Are there further amendments?
Delegates Zukoff and Lavender Bow move to amend the bill on page 3, section 1, line 61 by striking out the period and inserting a semicolon and the following. And 24, the West Virginia State Superintendent of Free Schools or his or her designee.
The question before the House is the adoption of the amendment as just read by the clerk. Are there members who wish to speak to adoption of the amendment? The lady from the fourth, Delegate Zukoff.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This is a very simple amendment. In discussing several other bills with the Department of Education, we learned that they would really like to be a part of this group to work on developing the protocols. So we have added them to this bill through this amendment. I would appreciate passage. Thank you.
The gentleman 28, Delegate Pack.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Once again, I would urge adoption of this amendment.
Are there other members who wish to speak to the amendment? If not, those in favor of adoption will say aye. Those opposed will say no. Ayes appear to have it. Ayes have it. Chair declares that amendment adopted. Are there further amendments? If not, the bill will be advanced to third reading. Are there further bills on second reading? If not, bills on first reading?
Committee substitute for Senate Bill 209 relating to annexation by minor boundary adjustment.
Bill will be advanced.
Committee substitute for Senate Bill 339 authorizing DHHR promulgate legislative rules.
Bill will be advanced.
Committee substitute for House Bill 4009 relating to the process for involuntary hospitalization.
The bill will be advanced.
Committee substitute for House Bill 4015 relating to broadband enhancement and expansion.
The bill will be advanced.
House Bill 4039 providing limitations on nuisance actions against fire departments and emergency medical services.
The bill will be advanced.
Committee substitute for House Bill 4422, the Patient Brokering Act.
The bill will be advanced.
House Bill 4514 permitting the use of leashed dogs to track mortally wounded deer or a bear.
The bill will be advanced.
House Bill 4529 relating to the collection of assessments and the priority of liens on property within a resort area.
The bill will be advanced.
House Bill 4589 conducting study for an appropriate memorial for West Virginians killed in the War on Terror.
The bill will be advanced.
Committee substitute for House Bill 4593 authorizing the assignment of poll workers to serve more than one per precinct under certain circumstances.
The bill will be advanced.
Committee substitute for House Bill 4594 allowing poll workers to be appointed to work in precincts outside their county.
The bill will be advanced.
House Bill 4697 removing the restriction that a mini distillery use raw agricultural products originating in the same premises.
The bill will be advanced.
Committee substitute for House Bill 4747 extending electronic submission of various applications and forms for nonprofit and charitable organizations, professionals, and licensees.
The bill will be advanced.
House Bill 4749 providing more efficient application processes for private investigators, security guards, and firms.
The bill will be advanced.
House Bill 4777 relating to the right of disposition of remains.
The bill will be advanced.
Committee substitute for House Bill 4852 relating to the penalties for the manufacture, delivery, possession, or possession with intent to manufacture or deliver methamphetamine.
The bill will be advanced.
House Bill 4864 relating to performance reviews of state agencies and regulatory boards.
The bill will be advanced.
House Bill 4865 requiring certain boards that seek to increase a fee or seek to impose a new fee to also submit a cost-saving measure.
The bill will be advanced.
House Bill 4956 relating generally to the partition of real property.
The bill will be advanced. Are there further bills on first reading? If not, leaves of absence. Lady from the 49th.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. For our colleagues, Delegate Hartman and Kessinger.
Are there objections to leaves being granted? The chair hears no objection and leaves shall be granted. Remarks by members. The gentleman from the 37th, Delegate Pushkin, is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, last week we learned that there were several representatives from the, I believe it was Virgin Hyperloop 1, who I believe met with you and met with other members and other state officials in hopes that they would be locating a development center here in our state. Now, like everybody else in this room, I sincerely hope that this isn't a pipe dream. I hope that this is the type of new development that we can attract to this state. But, Virgin Hyperloop, like a lot of other Fortune 500 companies, look for non-discrimination languages in state code. And in some of these Fortune 500 companies actually require it. So in order to make this state more attractive to companies like this, we should be taking up, debating, and voting on bills like the Fairness Act. But unfortunately, the body has been unwilling to allow this bill to be taken up for a debate and for a vote, and instead we see legislation like HCR 95 that was introduced yesterday, a bill that does nothing more than insult a segment of West Virginians. It ostracizes some of our friends and neighbors here in West Virginia and demonizes people simply because they're just a little bit, have a different predisposition than some of us. That's what that bill does. So instead of working on the Fairness Act, we see introduction of bills like this that only further put that negative stereotype of West Virginians outside of the state. So in the spirit of what I believe was the heartfelt apology for my friend, and I mean that when I call him my friend over there from Mercer, in the spirit of his apology yesterday, where he apologized to you, Mr. Speaker, to constituents back home, to the majority members of this body, even to the Democrats over here. And we appreciate that. But in that spirit, I would like to offer this body a chance to apologize to the LGBTQ community that we have continued to insult, ostracize, and demonize out of this body. So with that being said, I would like to move to remove from the table the gentleman from the third's motion to discharge House Bill 2741, otherwise known as the Fairness Act, from the table.
The gentleman's motion would be in order under either motions or miscellaneous business, not under remarks. Chair will note the gentleman's motion and take it up under miscellaneous business. Okay. The gentleman to 50th, Caputo.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This morning, the Marion County delegation received some really bad news. Fairmont Regional Medical Center, Mr. Speaker, locally known as Fairmont General Hospital, received notice this morning that the employees were issued a 60-day warn notice that that facility is about to close. There's approximately 600 people that work at that facility in Fairmont, Mr. Speaker, and they provide excellent health care for our region, and quite frankly, have been providing excellent health care for our region for 117 years. That facility first opened in 1903 and continued to grow for the last 117 years. But unfortunately, Mr. Speaker, a company bought them out a while back, a company that you all may recognize, a company called Electo. For my friends in the Northern Panhandle, they know all too well about Electo. It seems as though they like to go into a community, purchase their health care systems, drain the resources, and take the money and run. Now, we've been hearing these rumors for the last several weeks, and Delegate Angelucci and Delegate Longstreth and myself have met with Electo, who assured us they were just reorganizing and had no intention of closing that facility. We met with the governor when the rumors got stronger. We've even met with WVU and Mon Health trying to find a solution. And everybody assured us they were working together, that Marion County would continue to have the health care that it truly needs and, in our opinion, Mr. Speaker, truly deserves. Everyone told us they wanted to save the facility. And then this morning, we wake up to a warn notice. 600 jobs, 600 families, don't know what tomorrow is going to bring. Not only is it devastation to their way of life and the way they earn a living, it's devastation to the health care of our region. I just don't get it, Mr. Speaker. I'm sorry. These folks are bad actors, obviously. It's not the first time they've done it. You know, we continue to do all we can to provide a good business climate for West Virginia, and it's frustrating when you wake up to things like this. We're not ready to quit. We met this morning. We've been on the phone with the business leaders of Marion County, the Chamber of Commerce. We're meeting with the reps from their union, and we're willing to meet with WVU and Mon General. And I called the governor again personally this morning and said, you've got to get involved. We cannot lose this facility in Marion County. But how long can we continue to allow people to take advantage of West Virginia without taking a stand? I understand this is a private company. I get all that. And I've been through a lot of bankruptcies in the industry that I've had the privilege to work in for the last 43 years. But this is a little different. You know, we're strong, and West Virginians will survive, and they'll find other employment at the end of the day if this place gets shuttered. But the health care that's going to be non-existent in Marion County is going to be bad. It's going to be real bad for our community and the people in it. It's just not right, Mr. Speaker. It's just absolutely not right. 117 years of health care in Marion County, 600 jobs, been there since 1903, and they get 60-day notice? It's just not right. We need to send a message. We need to send a very clear message. We're here to support growing West Virginia, but we're not going to give away the farm, and we're not going to stand idly by when bad actors come into our state and take advantage of our people. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Lady in the 50th, Doug Longstreth.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This is devastating news for Marion County. We've had a lot of conversations. We've had conversations in person with Aleco, promising it would never happen like Wheeling. And we know what happened at Wheeling. They were going to use the resources to build Fairmont Regional. The ongoing conversations from the governor through Aleco, through Mon General, through WVU has been going on, saying they were going to save our hospital. No one was going to lose their job. We just need to reorganize a little bit so that we had the funding to keep the hospital open. No one knew this was coming. This is devastating to everyone. The employees just now hear through the news and through a letter from the CEO, they're going to be laid off and the hospital is going to close in 60 days. Mon General has offered to come to the table with WVU. There's no reason for this to happen. We need to call them back to the table, and as Delegate Caputo says, we need to get the governor involved, get him back to the table, keep this hospital open. It's an emergency hospital. We have an emergency room there. This isn't urgent care. This is an emergency room, and if you've been to Marion County, we've got little small towns, and we all do. One way in, one way out. And for them to get there and to get to another hospital in Morgantown, Clarksburg, could mean their lives. This hospital's been around a long time. I was born there. Most of my family's been born there. My nieces and nephew. It's been there a long time. It's a good hospital. We need an emergency hospital where we can save lives in our county and not have to go to another county and send them someplace else because a company in California decides they're not making a profit. And that's what this was all about. They're not making a profit, so they're going to dump them. Well, we can't allow that to happen. And so we're asking the governor, Mr. Speaker, we're asking them all to come back to the table. You know, I know that Mon General was willing to come to the table and to help out. And I say we get them back, and let's put this back on the table. Let's keep these people employed. This is very, very serious for our county and for the other counties surrounding us who do come to Fairmont General. So we're just disheartened by this. We know our employees are just devastated, their families. What are they going to do? In 60 days, what are they going to do about taking care of their families and getting a paycheck? So, Mr. Speaker, I hope that we can take care of this. We can bring everyone to the table, because my colleagues, this isn't something that we can just take for granted and just laugh it off and say they'll find another job. This is something that we need to save lives in Marion County and the surrounding areas. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The gentleman, the 50th, Doug Angelucci.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I want to piggyback on what Delegate Caputo and what Delegate Longstreth said, but I want to add to that. Several months ago, Tina Shaw, who's the president of our Chamber of Commerce, got together elected officials, community members, leaders. Delegate Storch came to Fairmont. Delegate Fluharty participated in our conference because they dealt with the same issue from this same Southern California hospital system that shut down Eastern Ohio Valley and Ohio Valley Medical Center, that my two friends had to deal with and see their constituents lose their jobs. Look around here today. There's 100 of us in here. Times it by 6. That's the number of jobs that's getting lost. That's the number of families that's getting affected because a Southern California hospital system came in here. And let me add to this a little bit. The city of Fairmont owned the land that the hospital sat on, gave it to Electo for free to save our hospital from filing bankruptcy. They got the land for free. And now they're shutting it down, taking 600 jobs with them. My great friend, the majority leader, she worked at Fairmont Regional Medical Center for 15 years. That's how I met her. I have a lot of memories with her, arguing politics in the emergency department, but she's dedicated herself to this hospital. And so has 600 other employees. My phone has been nonstop all day from people begging me, please help. Please help. We have met with the governor, Delegates Caputo and Longstreth and I. We've met with the CEO of WVU Medicine. We've met with the CEO of Mon Health. Electo is a bad actor, point blank. They did the same thing in Wheeling. WVU tried to help them and they pulled the rug out. And they're doing the same thing here. Mon Health and WVU is trying to be a good partner to save our hospital. This is all Electo. We have a certificate of need that we have to add new healthcare services. Well, we need to have that same oversight for hospitals that are trying to close. And as an administrator of the EMS system in Marion County, I've got rural areas of my county that when this hospital closes within 60 days, and it's not going to be 60 days, it's going to be much sooner than that. I asked Delegate Storch. But when this happens, people with life-threatening emergencies, it's going to be up to an hour to get them to the nearest hospital. People are going to die. This is serious. And so I'm going to ask our governor to please keep working hard. And I'm going to ask each and every one of you to please help us, because we need to keep this hospital open. And I can assure you, Delegates Caputo and Longstreth and I are going to do everything in our power to do so, but we need your help. Because this is a travesty, an out-of-state corporation that's coming in and literally just taking us for granted. And it's killing our citizens. It's going to kill our citizens. I assure you that. I see it firsthand. We've got to stop this. So thank you, Mr. Speaker, for the opportunity.
Elected in the 49th, Dr. Summers.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I just want to add to what they say. This is truly a sad day for the people of Fairmont and all of us that are a part of that Fairmont General Hospital family. My mother went to nursing school there and earned her diploma degree in nursing. I've had children there. I've worked in all kinds of departments there, and that is one hospital I'll say that you're loved by everybody when you're there, and they all work together to take care of people. I've reached out to the CEO and the emergency room director at my hospital that I work at now, United Hospital Center, and talked to them about how are we going to absorb the 50 or 60 people they see a day in the emergency room there, and they have reassured me that they are working to make sure that we're staffed for that, and if we're not, we'll work double time to accommodate those people. But it does also bring those EMS workers completely out of their community and out of service. So it's not just if they're traveling from Mannington, where it'll be so far to get to us, but then they're not even in the community to take care of them. So this is definitely a crisis that we're experiencing in West Virginia, and I would just like all of you to think about the people there, the 600 jobs, and how it's impacting all of them. Thank you.
The gentleman the third, Doug Fluharty.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I would just ask that the comments by our Majority Leader, Delegate Summers from the 49th, also the comments by the colleagues from the 50th, Caputa, Longstreth, Angelucci, and also comments by Delegate Barrett from the 61st on House Bill 4092 be put in the Appendix of Journal.
Are there objections to such comments being printed? Chair hears no objection. Those comments will be ordered printed in the appendix of the journal. Are there other remarks by members? If not, introduction of guests. The gentleman the 13th, Doug Higginbotham.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. In the gallery, I have a cousin of mine, if Holly would please stand. Holly Turley Greathouse is here to talk to you all about the medical cannabis program, among many other things. So if the House would please make her feel welcome.
The gentleman the 45th, Doug Martin.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Today I'd like to introduce the Doctor of the Day. The Doctor of the Day has delivered two delegates in this room, me and Delegate Martin over here. It's Dr. Joseph Reed, if everyone would make him feel welcome.
Are there further introductions? If not, we'll move on to miscellaneous business. We do have two items of miscellaneous business to come before the House. The first is the request by the gentleman from the 17th, Doug Lovejoy, with respect to House Bill 2321. During the proceedings of business today in the House, the chair did consult both Rules 80 and 98, and it is the opinion of the chair that the chair is empowered to make such references when appropriate and when determined by the chair. However, the chair did also consult the chairs of both Judiciary and Finance and is now of the opinion that the information received by the chair was not accurate, and the chair at this time would ask that the reference to the Committee on Finance for House Bill 2321 be withdrawn and that the bill proceed on the calendar. Does the chair hear objection? Chair hears no objection. That will be so ordered. Does the gentleman have further motions on that bill? If not, we'll move to the second item of miscellaneous business. That is the motion by the gentleman at 37th, Delegate Pushkin, that the motion to discharge House Bill 2741 be taken from the table. That question is now before the House. Motions to lay on the table and take from the table are non-debatable questions, so the question before the House then is, shall the motion be adopted? Those in favor of the motion, a roll call has been demanded. Is the demand sustained? Demand is sustained. The question now before the House is, shall the motion to discharge House Bill 2741 be taken from the table? Those in favor of the motion will vote aye. Those opposed to the motion will vote no. The clerk will prepare the machine. Has every member voted? If so, the clerk will close the machine and ascertain the result. On the question, there are 33 ayes, 60 nays, and 7 members absent not voting. Less than majority in favor, the motion is lost. Is there other miscellaneous business to come before the House? If not, then lady from the 49th for a motion.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move, subject to announcements, the House adjourn until 11:15 tomorrow.
The question before the House is that the House stand subject to announcements adjourned until 11:15 a.m. tomorrow. Are there announcements? Lady in the 49th.
Mr. Speaker, your Committee on Rules will meet at 10:45 tomorrow behind the chamber.
The gentleman in the 28th, Doug Pack.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Republican members of this House will caucus here in the chamber, and we will begin at 2 p.m.
The gentleman from the 10th, Delegate Chris.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Your Committee on Finance will meet tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. in the House Committee room, or House Finance Committee room. The agenda will be posted.
The lady from the 38th, Delegate Graves.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Just letting the members of the Pensions and Retirement Committee know that we are not meeting today. We're meeting next week.
The gentleman from the 15th, Delegate Foster.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Your subcommittee on House Bill 4717, the subcommittee members are myself, Delegate Pushkin, Kelly, Steele, and Miller. We will be meeting at 3:15 in House Judiciary Committee room. And we will be discussing the asset forfeiture bill.
The gentleman from the 10th, Delegate Kelly.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Your Committee on Energy will meet this afternoon. And I would like to announce that there is both a time change and also a location change for that energy meeting. Our meeting will be in the House Government Organization Committee room, and the meeting will be conducted at 3 p.m., not 2 p.m. Again, that will be energy will meet in House Government Organization at 3 p.m. this afternoon. Thank you.
The gentleman from the 13th, Delegate Higginbotham.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Your Committee on Education will be meeting today again at 5 p.m. in the Education Committee room. The agenda is posted. Additionally, Republican members will caucus with the Chairman and I at 4 p.m., and Democrats will caucus with us at 4:30.
The gentleman from the 45th, Delegate Martin.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Your Committee on Government Organization will meet tomorrow at 5:30 p.m. in the House Government Organization Committee room, 215 in the East Wing. The agenda will be posted.
The gentleman from the 53rd, Delegate Jennings.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Your Committee on Fire and EMS is canceled for today. We will not be meeting. Thank you.
The gentleman from the 12th, Delegate Westfall.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. We have lunch again on the East Wing in front of 204. Sam's Uptown Cafe, and the red carpet is provided by the Hospitality, Travel, and Tourism Group. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Lady from the 49th, Delegate Summers.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. An update on announcements. Your Rules Committee will meet at 11 a.m. tomorrow behind the chamber.
The gentleman from the 35th, Delegate Capito.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. The Tech Caucus is very excited to announce that tomorrow, as you found in your email, we'll be joined by former Intuit CEO and President Brad Smith, a native son of West Virginia, very successful entrepreneur and businessman, who's coming. Glad to join us for his thoughts tomorrow in the Government Organization's room at 10:30. So I would invite every member of this body and those sitting down there in the press to join us on ideas about how we move West Virginia forward. The West Virginia Chamber of Commerce will again provide us with boxed lunches on the way out the door to get us here to the chamber. On to committee announcements, Mr. Speaker. The House Committee on the Judiciary will reconvene at 4 o'clock today. 4 o'clock. 4 o'clock today to resume the posted agenda in the committee room. And tomorrow morning, on February 19th, we'll meet in the committee room at 9:30 a.m., and that agenda will be posted. Additionally, tomorrow morning at 8:30 a.m. in this chamber, there will be a public hearing on SCR 4, urging Congress to call a convention for the purpose of addressing congressional term limits. And lastly, and Mr. Speaker, on Thursday, February 20th, this Thursday, there will be another public hearing on House Bill 4176, otherwise known as the West Virginia Intelligence/Fusion Center Act. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The gentleman from the 50th, Delegate Caputo.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Democrats will caucus at 2 p.m. today in the House Government Organization Committee room. The Democrats will caucus at 2 p.m. in the House Government Organization Committee room. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Are there further announcements? If not, the question before the House is the motion by the lady from the 49th that the House stand adjourned until 11:15 tomorrow. Those in favor will say aye. Those opposed will say no. The ayes have it. The motion is adopted. The House is adjourned at 11:15 tomorrow.
Senate will please come to order. The Senate will please come to order. All those not having privileges of the floor will please vacate the chamber. And with those on the floor and our guests in the gallery, please rise as we are led in prayer this morning by Pastor of Gateway Christian Church in St. Albans, West Virginia, and he's also the West Virginia National Guard State Chaplain. In addition, we will be led in the pledge this morning by the senator from Nicholas County, and then we'll also be led in the pledge to the West Virginia flag by Miss Daly's kindergarten class from West Tays Elementary School in Hurricane, West Virginia. Pastor Stauffer.
Shall we pray? Most gracious Heavenly Father, what a privilege it is to stand in this chamber today. What a privilege it is to stand with these who serve the beloved people of our state, these children, the students, but most of all, it is a privilege and honor to stand in your presence, O God. May we all remember first and foremost that you and you alone give us life and light and the rights to live as we do in such a great country. We pray for the leaders of our nation. We ask for blessing on the men and women from our state and indeed all over the country who are serving today in uniform. And we ask for a hedge of protection around them and their families here at home. Give this body of servant leaders representing our people wisdom, a spirit of unity, an attitude of selflessness, and a resolve to work not only for the people, but most importantly for you. Give them strength and confidence to stand boldly on your convictions. May it be said of them as it was said of a man from another era, the test of a man's devotion will surely come one day. He loves God most who is at his post when others run away. O Lord, hear our prayer today as we offer it in your name. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Pastor Stauffer. The senator from Nicholas County.
If our guests in the gallery will join us in honoring our country, I pledge allegiance.
Thank you. Thank you. Now we will be led in the pledge to the West Virginia flag by Miss Daly's kindergarten class. Thank you. Thank you, children. That was amazing. Thank you. Very nice. Thank you. You may be seated. The reading of the journal.
West Virginia Legislature, Senate Journal, February 17th, 2020. The Senate met at 11:16 a.m. Senator Carmichael, Mr.
The
President,
senator
the
from
chair.
Monroe County asks unanimous consent that further reading of the journal be dispensed with and that it be approved as having been read. Is there objection? Chair hears none, so ordered. Introduction of guests. On behalf of the Senate, it is my pleasure to welcome our honorary pages for the day. Please stand and be recognized as your name is called. As guest of the senior senator from the 8th, we have Austin High, Courtney Johnson, and Madison Petrie. As guest of the senator from Boone County, Morgan Farrell. As guest of the senator from Braxton County, we have Jesse Parsons and Nova Stinger. As guest of the senior senator from the 17th, John A. Horn. And as guest of the junior senator from the 8th, Cooper Lindsey. And as guest of the senator from Greenbrier County, Hunter Walmsley, Kelly Hansen, Molly Baker, and Samantha Bostic. They're all standing in the front of our chambers. Let's give them a warm Senate welcome. Thank you. You may be seated. Further introductions, the junior senator from the 17th.
Thank you, Mr. President. On behalf of the Senate, it's my pleasure and yours to introduce our doc for the day. Returning to us in the rear of the chamber, we have with us Dr. Joseph Reed. If you wouldn't mind standing, let the Senate give you a warm welcome.
Further introductions, the senior senator from the 17th.
Thank you, Mr. President. On behalf of the junior senator from the 17th, we have the grandmother of our page, John Horn, here, Neva Horn. If she could stand, the Senate make her feel welcome. Also, on behalf of our page, parents of our page, James Clendenin, are here, Kevin and Tabitha Clendenin. If they can stand, the Senate make them feel welcome.
The senator from Braxton County.
Thank you, Mr. President. It's your pleasure, as well as the junior senator from Harrison County, to recognize the parents of our two pages from Robert Bland Middle School, bringing Jessie Parsons as her mom, Tina Ferguson, and Nova Stanger, his father, Clint Stanger. If they'd stand in the Senate, make them welcome.
The senator from Monongalia County.
Thank you, Mr. President. On behalf of the senators from Logan and Boone and myself, we would like to recognize members of the West Virginia Occupational Therapy Association located in the gallery today. If they'll please stand and let the Senate make them welcome.
The senator from Greenbrier County.
Thank you, Mr. President. On behalf of the senator from Monroe, I'd like to welcome here with our pages from Greenbrier East High School today, Margaret Dodd. If she would please stand, proud resident of Caldwell, West Virginia, and a teacher at Greenbrier East High School. Will the Senate make her welcome?
The senator from Pleasance County.
Mr. President, in the gallery to my right, we have a couple visitors from Wood County. If they would please stand and welcome them. Mary Ann Osborne with the West Virginia Symphony Orchestra, Parkersburg, and Dr. Chris Gilmer. He's the president of WVUP. Please make them welcome.
Senator may proceed.
In the back gallery, President's Gallery, we have the parents of some of our golf members that's going to be honored a little bit later. If they would stand and be recognized. Richard Davis, Melissa Lahan, Tina and Larry Webb, Lori and Mark Barnhart, Grandmas, Barbara Carl, and Joyce Barnhart. Would they please stand?
Further introductions, the senator from Boone County.
Thank you, Mr. President. On behalf of the senator from Logan, we're very pleased to have the chaperone of our page from Faith Christian Academy, Morgan's mother, Brandy Farrell. If she would stand in the Senate, make her welcome.
Are there further introductions? The junior senator from the 8th.
Thank you, Mr. President. On your behalf and on behalf of the senior senator from the 8th and on behalf of Paige Cooper Lindsey, I'd like to recognize my brother and father of Cooper Lindsey, Matthew Lindsey, in the presidential gallery. If he could stand and if the Senate can make him feel welcome. Thank you.
The senior senator from the 8th.
Thank you, Mr. President. On your behalf and my junior senator from the 8th behalf, we have two family members with us today with our pages. I'd ask that they stand as I mentioned their name, Joe and Candy High and Sarah Johnson. If they would stand in the Senate, please make them welcome.
Are there further introductions? Further introductions. Communications from the House of Delegates.
The Clerk of the House announced that the House amended and passed committee substitute for Senate Bill 544, authorizing pharmacists and pharmacy interns administer vaccines.
The junior senator from the 17th.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move the Senate concur with the House amendment to Senate Bill 544.
Junior Senator from the 17th moves that the Senate concur in House amendments to Senate Bill 544. Is there discussion? The Junior Senator from the 17th.
Thank you, Mr. President. This bill authorizes joint rules to permit a licensed pharmacist or pharmacy intern to administer immunizations in accordance with the Centers for Disease Control guidelines and recommended schedule. The House amendment substitutes the word vaccine for immunization and makes title amendment that are all just technical in nature. I urge passage.
Is there further discussion? Further discussion? Not. Question for the Senate is adoption of the motion as offered by the Junior Senator from the 17th. All those in favor will say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes do have it. I declare the motion adopted. The question now is, shall the bill pass? Is there further discussion? Not. All those in favor will vote yea. Those opposed will vote nay. The clerk will prepare the machine. Has every member voted? Has every member voted? So, clerk will close the machine and ascertain the results. On this question being 33 yeas, 0 nays, 1 absent not voting, more than the majority of those elected having voted in the affirmative, I declare the bill passed. Clerk will communicate the action of the Senate to the House.
The Clerk of the House announced the passage by that body of committee substitute for House Bill 2961, permitting the Commissioner to require a water supply system be equipped with a backflow prevention assembly.
Message will be received and referred to the Committee on Transportation and Infrastructure with a second reference to the Committee on Finance.
Committee substitute for House Bill 4067, relating to crimes against property.
Message be received and referred to the Committee on the Judiciary.
Committee substitute for House Bill 4101, relating to requiring a court to verify certain conditions are met before a child who has been removed from a home.
Message will be received, referred to the Select Committee on Children and Families.
Committee substitute for House Bill 4123, clarifying that 911 telecommunication workers are included in the definition of those individuals who perform emergency services during a disaster.
Message will be received, referred to the Committee on Judiciary with a second reference to the Committee on Finance.
Committee substitute for House Bill 4387, Donated Drug Repository Program.
Message will be received and referred to Committee on Health and Human Resources.
Committee substitute for House Bill 4546, relating to tuberculosis testing for school superintendents.
Message will be received and referred to the Committee on Education.
Committee substitute for House Bill 4581, relating to West Virginia Clearance for Access, Registry, and Employment Screening.
Message will be received and referred to Committee on Health and Human Resources.
Committee substitute for House Bill 4666, relating to competitive bids for intergovernmental relations and urban mass transportation.
Message will be received and referred to the Committee on Government Organization.
Committee substitute for House Bill 4670, relating to the juvenile restorative justice programs.
Message will be received and referred to Committee on the Judiciary.
House Bill 4955, relating to reducing the cost of fees for state licenses to carry concealed deadly weapons and provisional state licenses to carry concealed deadly weapons.
Message will be received and referred to the Committee on Finance. Are there additional messages from the House of Delegates?
No, sir.
Are there communications from the Executive?
There are none.
Reports from standing committees.
Your Committee on the Judiciary has had under consideration Senate Bill 130, relating to procedure for driver's license suspension and revocation for DUI, and reports back committee substitute for same. And Senate Bill 253, providing for fair pay and maximized employment of disabled persons, and reports back committee substitute for same, with the recommendation that the two committee substitutes do pass, but under the original double committee references, first be referred to the Committee on Finance. Respectfully submitted, Charles S. Trump IV, Chair.
Report will be received. Recognize the senior senator from the 15th.
Thank you, Mr. President. I request unanimous consent that the second reference to the Committee of Finance be dispensed on both of these bills of 130 and 253. Both these bills are revenue neutral.
Without objection, so ordered.
Your Committee on Economic Development has had under consideration Senate Bill 521, creating Tax and Economic Incentives Review Committee, and reports back a committee substitute for same, with the recommendation that the committee substitute do pass, but under the original double committee reference, first be referred to the Committee on Government Organization. Respectfully submitted, Chandler Swope, Chair.
Report will be received under the bill's original double committee reference, be referred to Committee on Government Organization.
Your Committee on Banking and Insurance has had under consideration Senate Bill 651 relating to definition of mortgage loan originator, and engrossed House Bill 4411 relating to the West Virginia Residential Mortgage Lender, Broker, and Servicer Act, and reports the same back with the recommendation that they each do pass. Respectfully submitted, Michael T. Azinger, Chair.
Report will be received.
Your Committee on the Judiciary has had under consideration Senate Bill 660 regulating electric bicycles, and reports back to committee substitute for same, with the recommendation that the committee substitute do pass. Respectfully submitted, Charles S. Trump IV, Chair.
Report will be received.
Your Committee on Banking and Insurance has had under consideration Senate Bill 710, establishing pilot program to evaluate telemedicine health services, and reports the same back with the recommendation without recommendation as to passage, but under the original double committee reference, first be referred to the Committee on Health and Human Resources. Respectfully submitted, Michael T. Azinger, Chair.
Report will be received under the bill's original double committee reference, be referred to the Committee on Health and Human Resources.
Your Committee on Natural Resources has had under consideration Senate Concurrent Resolution 40 originating in committee, requesting the Joint Subcommittee on Parks, Recreation, and Natural Resources study establishing and expanding a statewide system of greenways and trails, and reports the same back with the recommendation that it be adopted. Respectfully submitted, Bill Hamilton, Chair.
Report will be received. Junior Senator from the 17th.
Thank you, Mr. President. I request unanimous consent that the bill be referred to the Committee on Rules.
Is there objection? Chair hears none, so ordered.
Your Committee on Natural Resources has had under consideration Senate Concurrent Resolution 41, requesting the governor take actions necessary for West Virginia to become eligible to join the outdoor recreation industry confluence of states. And reports the same back with the recommendation that it be adopted, but with the further recommendation that it first be referred to the Committee on Rules. Respectfully submitted, Bill Hamilton, Chair.
Report will be received. Recognize Junior Senator from the 17th.
Thank you, Mr. President. I request unanimous consent that the bill be referred to the Committee on Rules.
Is there objection? Chair hears none, so ordered.
Your Committee on Banking and Insurance has had under consideration engrossed House Bill 4149 relating to insurance, and has amended same, and reports the same back with a recommendation that it do pass as amended. Respectfully submitted, Michael T. Azinger, Chair.
Report will be received.
Your Committee on Banking and Insurance has had under consideration engrossed House Bill 4359, increasing the filing fees for insurers, and has amended same, and reports the same back with the recommendation that it do pass as amended. Respectfully submitted, Michael T. Azinger, Chair.
Report will be received.
Your Committee on Natural Resources has had under consideration engrossed House Bill 4515 relating to wildlife resources, eligibility for license or permit application, and reports the same back with the recommendation that it do pass. Respectfully submitted, Bill Hamilton, Chair.
Report will be received.
That's all I have, sir.
Recognize the Senior Senator from the 17th.
President, I ask unanimous consent that we return to the second order of business.
Is there objection? Chair hears none. Introduction of guests. Senior Senator from the 17th.
Thank you, Mr. President. It's my pleasure, yours and the Junior Senator from the 17th today, to have the AP Government class from St. Albans High School and their teacher, Vicki Hensley. If they can stand and the Senate make them feel welcome.
Thank you. Are there further introductions? Further introductions? Are there reports from select committees?
There are none.
Introduction of bills?
There are none.
Resolutions?
Senate Resolution 46 by Senator Roberts, congratulating Victory Baptist Academy volleyball team for winning the 2019 West Virginia Christian Education Association State Volleyball Tournament.
Under the rules of the Senate, the resolution will lie over one day. Are there additional resolutions?
No, sir.
Motions? Petitions?
There are none.
Unfinished business?
Senate Concurrent Resolution 39, naming the U.S. Navy Petty Officer 1, Jeffrey S. Taylor Memorial Bridge.
Resolution will be referred to the Committee on Transportation and Infrastructure.
Senate Resolution 45, congratulating the St. Mary's High School golf team for winning the 2019 Class A State Golf Championship.
Recognize the Senator from Pleasants County.
Mr. President, I request unanimous consent that the resolution be taken up for immediate consideration, committee reference be dispensed with, and the resolution be placed upon its adoption.
Is there objection? Chair hears none. Clerk will please read the resolution.
Senate Resolution 45, congratulating the St. Mary's High School golf team for winning the 2019 West Virginia Class A State Golf Championship.
The question before the Senate is adoption of the resolution. Is there discussion? The Senator from Pleasants County.
Thank you. It's very rare that we get to honor a statewide team that's won the state championship down here. So they've already been over to the House, been honored, and the St. Mary's golf team captured their state championship in dominant fashion with a 21-stroke victory over their nearest competitor at the Spadell Golf Club at Ogilvy Park in Wheeling, West Virginia. The St. Mary's golf team is coached by Katie Hamilton and Blaze Armstrong, and consists of team members Grant Barnhart, Ethan Bennett, Ethan Davis, Brandon Lahan, Luke Webb, Braden Hall, and Kyle Jones. And with them is the Superintendent of Schools in Pleasants County, Mike Webb. I urge passage of this resolution. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there further discussion? Further discussion? Not, the question before the Senate is adoption of the resolution. All those in favor will say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes do have it. I declare the resolution adopted. Junior Senator from the 17th.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move the Senate stand in brief recess for the purposes of presenting this resolution.
Junior Senator from the 17th moves that the Senate stand in recess for the purpose of presenting this resolution. All those in favor will say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes do have it. I declare the Senate in recess to present this resolution. Senate will please come to order. The Senate will please come to order. Are there additional items under unfinished business?
No, sir.
Bills on third reading.
Engrossed Senate Bill 572, expiring funds from general revenue and lottery net profits to various accounts. Third reading of the bill.
Question before the Senate is, shall the bill pass? Is there discussion? The senior senator from the 15th.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senate Bill 572 expires $18,294,868 from the unappropriated balance of the lottery net profits for fiscal year 2020 to the unappropriated surplus balance of the general revenue. These available funds are appropriated as follows. The first is to the DHHR Division of Health, $920,500 for the Office of Medical Cannabis. The second is also to the DHHR Consolidated Medical Services Fund. There's $10 million for the Institute facilities operations and $714,368 for the capital outlay repairs and equipment. And third is, again, the DHHR, the Division of Human Services, for $6,600,000 added to the medical services appropriation. Mr. President, I urge passage.
Is there further discussion? Further discussion? Not. The question for the Senate is, shall the bill pass? All those in favor will vote yea. Those opposed will vote nay. The clerk will prepare the machine. Has every member voted? Has every member voted? If so, the clerk will close the machine and ascertain the results. On this question there being 34 yeas, 0 nays, 0 absent, not voting, more than the majority of those present, or more than the majority of those elected having voted in the affirmative, I declare the bill passed. Junior Senator from the 17th.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move the bill be made effective from passage and request unanimous consent that the roll call used on passage of the bill be used to make it so effective.
Junior Senator from the 17th moves that the bill be made effective from passage and request unanimous consent that the roll call used on passage of the bill be used to make it so effective. Is there objection? Chair hears none. On this question being 34 yeas, 0 nays, 0 absent, not voting, more than 2/3 of those elected having voted in the affirmative, I declare the bill effective from passage. Clerk will communicate the action of the Senate to the House.
Engrossed committee substitute for Senate Bill 717, relating generally to adult protective services. Third reading of the bill.
Question before the Senate is, shall the bill pass? Is there discussion? The senator from Morgan County.
Thank you, Mr. President. The committee substitute for Senate Bill 717 amends 13 different sections of the code, all located in Chapter 9, Article 6. Chapter 9 is the DHHR. Article 6 is social services for adults. The amended sections are sections 1 through 11 inclusive, section 13 and section 16. The bill, the first section addressed in the bill is the definition section, and it changes some definitions, adds some new definitions. We're adding a definition of adult protective services to the law. We're modifying the definition of abuse to include psychological harm, including use of undue influence. The bill alters the definition of neglect. The bill strikes the definition of incapacitated adult and instead incorporates a definition of vulnerable adult, arguably broader than the class of adults who are simply incapacitated. The bill is designed to enhance and expand the authority of the DHHR to do investigations. The significance of the change of incapacitated is that's a medical term. A physician in a facility typically decides whether a person is incapacitated or not. We're replacing that throughout with vulnerable adult. The bill redefines the term financial exploitation. So that's an important part of this bill, Mr. President. It's designed to enhance protections of the elderly or vulnerable adults from financial exploitation. The bill redefines terms such as caregiver. It adds a definition for fiduciary. The bill adds a requirement for the Secretary to direct the coordination of investigations for financial exploitation to the section relating to cooperation among agencies. The bill adds a section to abate financial exploitation. to types of action the department or any reputable person may bring. It includes financial exploitation as a reason for changes in payment and termination of payment for services to a vulnerable person. The bill provides for release of investigative summaries. It gives financial institutions and employees of a financial institution the opportunity to report allegations of suspected financial exploitation or abuse or neglect. Mr. President, I'll be happy to try to answer any questions. I would, at the appropriate time, request for myself a Rule 43 ruling, Mr. President. This bill touches upon the duties and authority of financial institutions. I serve as a director of a financial institution, a state chartered bank, and I ask for a ruling of the chair on the question of whether or not I should be required to vote or may be excused from voting on the passage of this bill.
Is there further discussion? Further discussion? If not, the question before the Senate is, shall the bill pass? The Senator has, in response to your inquiry with regard to Rule 43, it's my understanding of your situation that you are a member of a class and therefore would be required to vote. Is there further Rule 43s? Not. All those in favor will vote yea. Those opposed will vote nay. The clerk will prepare the machine. Has every member voted? Has every member voted? So the clerk will close the machine and ascertain the results. On this question, there being 34 yeas, 0 nays, 0 absent and not voting, more than a majority of those present and voting having voted in the affirmative, I declare the bill passed. Clerk will communicate the action of the Senate to the House.
Engrossed Senate Bill 725, supplemental appropriation to various Department of Education accounts. Third reading of the bill.
Question before the Senate is, shall the bill pass? Is there discussion? The senior senator from the 15th.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thirsty this morning. Senate Bill 725, this is a supplemental that increases the federal spending authority to a total of $21 million within the Department of Education. Federal spending authority is increased in the following manner. $10 million into current expenses for the State Board of Education, and that would be for Fund 8712, the State Department of Education. $1 million in current expenses for the State Board of Education for the Vocational Division, which is Fund 8714, and $10 million in the current expenses for the State Board of Education for Aid for Exceptional Children, which is Fund 8715. Mr. President, I urge passage.
Is there further discussion? Further discussion? Not. All those in favor will vote yea. Those opposed will vote nay. The clerk will prepare the machine. Has every member voted? Has every member voted? If so, the clerk will close the machine and ascertain the results. On this question being 34 yeas, 0 nays, 0 absent and not voting, more than a majority of those elected having voted in the affirmative, I declare the bill passed. Junior Senator from the 17th.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move the bill be made effective from passage and request unanimous consent that the roll call used on passage of the bill be used to make it so effective.
Junior Senator from the 17th moves that the bill be made effective from passage and request unanimous consent that the roll call used on passage of the bill be used to make it so effective. Is there objection? Chair hears none. On this question being 34 yeas, 0 nays, 0 absent and not voting, more than 2/3 of those elected having voted in the affirmative, I declare the bill effective from passage. Clerk will communicate the action of the Senate to the House.
Engrossed Senate Bill 778, supplemental appropriation expiring funds from State Excess Lottery Revenue Fund to DHHR. Third reading of the bill.
The question before the Senate is, shall the bill pass? Is there discussion? The senior senator from the 15th.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senate Bill 778 is a supplemental that expires $5,158,000 from the state's unappropriated surplus balance in the State Excess Lottery Fund to the General Revenue Surplus. These funds are then appropriated to the Department of Health and Human Resources, the Division of Human Services, Medical Services Appropriation. Mr. President, I urge passage.
Is there further discussion? If not, all those in favor will vote yea. Those opposed will vote nay. The clerk will prepare the machine. Is Has every member voted? Has every member voted? If so, the clerk will close the machine and ascertain the results. On this question being 34 yeas, 0 nays, 0 absent, not voting, more than majority of those elected having voted in the affirmative, I declare the bill passed. Junior Senator from the 17th.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move the bill be made effective from passage and request unanimous consent that the roll call used on passage of the bill be used to make it so effective.
Junior Senator from the 17th moves that the bill be made effective from passage and request unanimous consent that the roll call used on passage of the bill be used to make it so effective. Is there objection? Chair hears none. On this question being 34 yeas, 0 nays, 0 absent, not voting, more than two-thirds of those elected having voted in the affirmative, I declare the bill effective from passage. Clerk will communicate the action of the Senate to the House.
Engrossed Senate Bill 779, Supplemental Appropriation Expiring Funds and the State Excess Lottery Revenue to Department of Veterans Assistance. Third reading of the bill.
Question before the Senate is, shall the bill pass? Is there discussion? The senior senator from the 15th.
Again, thank you, Mr. President. Senate Bill 779 expires $4.5 million from the unappropriated surplus balance in the State Excess Lottery Fund to the General Revenue Surplus. These funds are then appropriated to the Department of Veterans Assistance for the Veterans Nursing Home Appropriation. Mr. President, I urge passage.
Is there further discussion? If not, all those in favor will vote yea. Those opposed will vote nay. The clerk will prepare the machine. Has every member voted? Has every member voted? If so, the clerk will close the machine and ascertain the results. On this question being 34 yeas, 0 nays, 0 absent, not voting, more than the majority of those elected having voted in the affirmative, I declare the bill passed. Junior Senator from the 17th.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move the bill be made effective from passage and request unanimous consent that the roll call used to make it so effective.
Junior Senator from the 17th moves that the bill be made effective from passage and request unanimous consent that the roll call used on passage of the bill be used to make it so effective. Is there objection? Chair hears none. On this question being 34 yeas, 0 nays, 0 absent, not voting, more than two-thirds of those elected having voted in the affirmative, I declare the bill effective from passage. Clerk will communicate the action of the Senate to the House.
Engrossed Senate Bill 780, Supplemental Appropriation by decreasing and adding new appropriation out of Treasury to DMAPs. Third reading of the bill.
Question before the Senate is, shall the bill pass? Is there discussion? The senior senator from the 15th.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senate Bill 780 is a supplemental appropriation, simply realigns federal spending authority with the West Virginia National Guard Counter-Drug Fund. This realignment has a net zero effect on this fund. Mr. President, I urge passage.
Is there further discussion? Not. Question before the Senate is, shall the bill pass? All those in favor will vote yea. Those opposed will vote nay. The clerk will prepare the machine. Has every member voted? Has every member voted? If so, the clerk will close the machine and ascertain the results. On this question being 34 yeas, 0 nays, 0 absent, not voting, more than a majority of those elected having voted in the affirmative, I declare the bill passed. Junior Senator from the 17th.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move the bill be made effective from passage and request unanimous consent that the roll call used on passage of the bill be used to make it so effective.
Junior Senator from the 17th moves that the bill be made effective from passage and requests unanimous consent that the roll call used on passage of the bill be used to make it so effective. Is there objection? Chair hears none. On this question being 34 yeas, 0 nays, 0 absent, not voting, more than two-thirds of those elected having voted in the affirmative, I declare the bill effective from passage. Clerk will communicate the action of the Senate to the House.
Engrossed House Bill 4353, creating a rational nexus requirement between prior criminal conduct and initial licensure decision-making. Third reading of the bill.
The question before the Senate is, shall the bill pass? Is there discussion? The senior senator from the 6th.
Thank you, Mr. President. House Bill 4353 extends the rational nexus standard, which prohibits denial of licensure because of a prior conviction that does not bear a logical connection to the license, to occupations and professions outside of the Chapter 30 Code. This was an interim bill recommended by the Joint Committee on Government Organization. It passed the House by a vote of 97 to 1 to 2. This is just another barrier that we're trying to tear down that's preventing people from getting jobs here in the state, and I urge passage of the bill.
Is there further discussion? That recognize the junior senator from the 8th.
Thank you, Mr. President. Will the senator from the 6th yield?
Senator yields. Senator does yield.
Thank you. I just want to make sure this just applies to initial licensure, correct?
Yes, yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there further discussion? Not. All those in favor will vote yea. Those opposed will vote nay. The clerk will prepare the machine. Has every member voted? Has every member voted? So the clerk will close the machine and ascertain the results. On this question being 34 yeas, 0 nays, 0 absent, not voting, more than a majority of those present and voting having voted in the affirmative, I declare the bill passed. The clerk has a title amendment.
Senator Maynard moved to amend the title of the bill.
Question before the Senate is adoption of the title amendment. All those in favor will say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes do have it. Declare the title amendment adopted. Clerk will communicate the action of the Senate to the House.
Engrossed House Bill 4601 relating to distribution of premium tax proceeds to municipal policemen's and firemen's pension and relief funds. Third reading of the bill.
The question before the Senate is, shall the bill pass? Is there discussion? The senator from Wood County.
Thank you, Mr. President. House Bill 4601 would amend the provisions of the West Virginia Code relating to deferred retirement option plans, or quote-unquote drop plans, for members of the municipal police and fire pension funds. Drop plan members are not classified as active for premium tax proceed distribution, which skews certain calculations of the Municipal Pensions Oversight Board. This bill provides that any drop plan members who work 100 hours or more per month would be included as active for purposes of premium tax proceed distribution from the Municipal Pensions Security Fund. Glad to answer any questions. Otherwise, Mr. President, I urge passage of the bill.
Is there further discussion? If not, all those in favor will vote yea. Those opposed will vote nay. The clerk will prepare the machine. Has every member voted? Has every member voted? So the clerk will close the machine and ascertain the results. On this question being 34 yeas, 0 nays, 0 absent and not voting, more than a majority of those present and voting having voted in the affirmative, I declare the bill passed. Clerk will communicate the action of the Senate to the House. Are there additional bills on third reading?
No, sir.
Bills on second reading?
Committee substitute for Senate Bill 6, allowing DOH issue permits for certain tractors with certain trailers not exceeding specified maximum axle weights. Second reading of the bill.
Are there amendments to the bill?
Yes, sir. Senator Smith moved to amend the bill by striking out everything after the enacting clause.
Recognize the senator from Tucker County.
Thank you, Mr. President. I ask unanimous consent to explain the amendment in lieu of having it read.
Is there objection? Chair hears none. The senator may proceed.
Thank you, Mr. President. It's somewhat lengthy amendment, but it's pretty simple. It adds part to Chapter 17. It adds 17-2A, 6B, County Road Accountability and Transparency. It just puts in there where they have to, the DOH has to have their fund or their spending and their road work and everything transparent on the website, so citizens of West Virginia can get on and see which roads is being taken care of, how much they cost, who did them, stuff like that. And then it adds Article 30, be the Enhanced Road Repair and Maintenance Program, to the Chapter 17, and it's just where they have to report the legislative findings and establishment of a enhanced road repair and maintenance program where if they can't get the road done or the repair work done that these big trucks are doing, or that they have to contract it out to get it done. And it adds 17-34 on the funding and payment of vendors. It does not add, has no fiscal note. It just says that they, if they can't get it done, they've got the authority to transfer money to have them contracted out. And then the last part, 17-3-5, reporting requirements by the Division of Highways and a legislative audit, basically says they have to report to the legislature every year what work was done the previous year, and just overall transparency of what's going on. So it's a pretty simple amendment, rather lengthy, but I urge passage.
Is there further discussion? Recognize the senator from Morgan County.
Thank you, Mr. President. I request a ruling of the chair as to whether or not the amendment is germane to the bill.
Senate will be in order. Senate will be in order. The senator from Morgan's point is well taken. It's my ruling that the amendment would not be germane. So, are there further amendments to the bill?
Yes, sir. Senator Beach moved to amend the bill on page 4,
Recognize
section
the
11.
senator from Monongalia County.
Thank you, Mr. President. Unanimous consent to explain the amendment in lieu of it have it read and reserve the right to close.
Is there objection? Chair hears none. Senator may proceed.
Thank you, Mr. President. Ladies and gentlemen, the amendment before you simply addresses exceeding maximum width of vehicles traveling our roads and requires that an escort vehicle be provided per one vehicle or a combination of vehicles, both front and rear of that process and movement of vehicles.
Is there further discussion? Further discussion. Recognize Senator from Morgan County.
Thank you, Mr. President. I rise respectfully in opposition to the gentleman's amendment for a couple reasons. Number one, I think it's a matter of over-regulation, but number two, I think it is unnecessary. Now, I will say that this amendment was not considered in committee, but the bill, the statute that is amended in Senate Bill 6 contains language in subsection A and its subdivision 3C that allows the Commissioner of Highways or the Public Service Commission to impose to impose additional conditions, any additional conditions that are warranted. The same language generally appears in subsection B, it's subdivision 3C, capital C. Again, it allows the Commissioner of the Division of Highways or the Public Service Commission to impose any additional conditions on a permit. So, in a circumstance where a vehicle had to obtain a permit because it had excess weight or size, as I read the current law, without the gentleman's amendment, the Commissioner of Highways and the Public Service Commission could impose as an additional condition this escort language or escort vehicles called for by the gentleman's amendment. The problem with the amendment by the senator from Monongalia County, in my opinion, is that it would require it in all cases. It would require it literally in cases where a vehicle is being moved only a very, very short distance over a road, or maybe where width of a vehicle exceeded by only 1 inch. So I don't know that I will oppose the amendment because I don't think it's necessary that it be imposed in all cases, and that in their discretion and authority, the Commissioner of Highways and the Public Service Commission have the ability to make such restrictions now.
Thank you. Is there further discussion? Further discussion before I recognize the senator from Monongalia to close debate? Further discussion? Senator from Monongalia is recognized to close debate.
Thank you, Mr. President. Ladies and gentlemen, and Mr. President, the amendment that you have in front of you, while yes, code specifies that it's permissive for the Department of Highways and the Public Service Commission to craft language that would address these issues on some of our roads, this does mandate it, and I think that's the crux of what I'm trying to get to here. And just let me go through a little situation that happened in my county, and if history proves itself, I'm sure it's happened quite more often than just this recent incident in my county. In September of this year, a young lady, a mother of 3, was on her way home from work. It was late in the evening, and it was a 2-lane road, Route 7, in the western end of Monongalia County. And what had occurred was there was two tractor trailers. One was carrying a bulldozer with the blade in its full position. The blade had not been removed. It was in its full position. So the two vehicles that she was approaching were basically challenging each other for that 2-lane highway, both lanes. She had nowhere to go. When she came around the corner, she was facing this blade. She was not charged, or the family was not notified that she was in excessive speed. She was traveling the speed limit. But it was late in the evening, lights were dim. It was that scenario that we all fear when we're traveling. The headlights aren't quite working enough for you, and the light's just not enough for you to see what's going on. high tree overhead coverage above the road as well. So the lighting was not there for her to see this full bulldozer blade that she was running into. She's trying to avoid the accident, of course, trying to avoid the situation, which honestly probably made matters worse for her, because what had actually happened, she had actually clipped the end of that blade that was sticking out beyond the yellow line. So folks, I'm asking that you consider this piece of legislation, this amendment, and I just want you to consider, had that been your daughter or your wife or your mother or even one of your children of any, grandchildren, whatever it may be, who may have been put in this position, I think we have an opportunity to address something here very easily, and hopefully this won't happen again. Thank you, Mr. President.
Question for the Senate is adoption of the amendment as offered by the senator from Montague County. All those in favor will say aye. Those opposed, no. Noes appear to have it. Noes do have it. I declare the amendment rejected. Are there further amendments to the bill?
No, sir.
Not, the bill will be engrossed and advanced to third reading.
Committee substitute for Senate Bill 204, providing for nonpartisan elections of county prosecuting attorneys. Second reading of the bill.
Are there amendments to the bill?
No, sir.
Not, the bill will be engrossed and advanced to third reading.
Committee substitute for Senate Bill 285, eliminating West Virginia Greyhound Breeding Development Fund. Second reading of the bill.
Junior Senator from the 17th.
Thank you, Mr. President. I request unanimous consent that the bill be moved to third with right to amend.
Is there objection? Chair hears none, so ordered.
Committee substitute for Senate Bill 291, requiring PEIA and health insurance providers provide mental health parity.
Junior Senator from the 17th.
Thank you, Mr. President. I request unanimous consent that the bill lie over 1 day while retaining its place on the calendar.
Is there objection? Chair hears none, so ordered.
Senate Bill 652, authorizing school building authority promulgate legislative rules. Second reading of the bill.
Are there amendments to the bill?
No, sir.
Not, the bill will be engrossed, advanced to third reading.
Senate Bill 655, relating to valuation of natural resources land property. Second reading of the bill.
Are there amendments to the bill?
No, sir.
Not, the bill will be engrossed, advanced to third reading.
Committee substitute for Senate Bill 686, exempting contract and common carrier laws for certain vehicles. Second reading of the bill.
Are there amendments to the bill?
No, sir.
Not, the bill will be engrossed, advanced to third reading.
Committee substitute for Senate Bill 719, imposing healthcare-related provider tax on certain healthcare organizations. Second reading of the bill.
Are there amendments to the bill?
No, sir.
Not, the bill will be engrossed and advanced to third reading.
Senate Bill 740, clarifying authorized users of Ron Yost Personal Assistance Services Fund. Second reading of the bill.
Are there amendments to the bill?
No, sir.
Not, the bill will be engrossed and advanced to third reading.
Senate Bill 747, requiring Bureau for Public Health develop diabetes action plan. Second reading of the bill.
Are there amendments to the bill?
No, sir.
Not, the bill will be engrossed and advanced to third reading.
Senate Bill 748, increasing awareness of palliative care services. Second reading of the bill.
Are there amendments to the bill?
No, sir.
Not, the bill will be engrossed and advanced to third reading.
Senate Bill 767, relating to licensure of hospitals. Second reading of the bill.
Are there amendments to the bill?
No, sir.
Not, the bill will be engrossed and advanced to third reading.
Engrossed committee substitute for House Bill 4026, exempting businesses transporting scrap tires, waste tires, or other used tires from certain statutory provisions. Second reading of the bill.
Are there amendments to the bill?
Yes, sir. The Committee on Government Organization moved to amend the bill on page 3, section 3, line 67 by striking out the word
Recognize the senior senator from the 6th.
Thank you, Mr. President. I request unanimous consent to explain the amendment in lieu of having it read.
Is there objection? Chair hears none. Senator may proceed.
Thank you, Mr. President. The amendment is technical, changing the final conjunction in a list of items from and to or. Urge adoption of the amendment.
Is there further discussion? Further discussion? Not. Question for the Senate is adoption amendment as offered by the senior senator from the 6th. All those in favor will say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes appear to have, the ayes do. I declare the amendment adopted. Are there further amendments to the bill?
No, sir.
Not, the bill be advanced.
Engrossed House Bill 4501, relating to the ability to refuse offenders for commitment to a jail. Second reading of the bill.
Are there amendments to the bill?
Yes, sir. The Committee on the Judiciary moved to amend the bill
Recognize
by
the
striking out
senator
everything.
from Morgan County.
Thank you, Mr. President. I request unanimous consent to explain the committee amendment in lieu of having it read.
Is there objection? Chair hears none. The senator may proceed.
Thank you, Mr. President. The committee amendment is a strike and insert amendment for the bill. The bill addresses what happens when people are presented for incarceration and they may be in need of medical attention. The committee amendment changed the language a little bit from the House bill, providing now that the Division of Corrections and Rehabilitations or the Commissioner may accept an offender into custody who appears to be in need of medical attention of a degree necessitating treatment by a licensed medical professional who refuses a medical examination or medical treatment to a licensed medical professional. The original House bill limited that to physicians, and it occurs on occasion that the refusal to accept medical treatment is made by a person who would otherwise be incarcerated to a medical professional other than a physician. I'd be happy to try to answer any questions. Otherwise, I urge the adoption of the committee's amendment.
Is there further discussion? Not. The question before the Senate is adoption of the Judiciary Committee amendment as explained by the Senator from Morgan. All those in favor will say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes do have it. Declare the committee amendment adopted. Are there further amendments to the bill?
No, sir.
Not. The bill will be advanced. Are there additional bills under second reading?
No, sir.
Bills on first reading. Junior Senator from the 17th.
Thank you, Mr. President. I request unanimous consent that all bills on first reading be considered read a first time and advanced to second reading.
Is there objection? Chair hears none, so ordered. Introduction of guests. Recognize the Senator from Boone County.
Thank you, Mr. President. In the North Gallery, we have some pharmacy students from Marshall and the University of Charleston. If they would stand, and the Senate make them welcome.
Thank you. Introductions. Further introductions. Miscellaneous business, or excuse me, remarks by members of the Senate. Remarks by members of the Senate. Recognize the Junior Senator from the 4th.
Thank you, Mr. President. As many of you know, I'd introduced a bill here a while back regarding needle exchange programs, and that garnered a lot of attention, so much so that I got an invitation to go down and do a tour down through Huntington, where one of our county local health departments operates a needle exchange. And so I got to go through some streets and alleys, the buildings that have become were businesses that have been transitioned into flop houses. And in about a 20-minute walk, we found about 10 syringes laying along the side of a street, along the side of a building. These were health department syringes that your taxpayer dollars and my taxpayer dollars are used to administer to the public that comes and access these exchanges. Now, I don't want you to take me wrong, Mr. President, that I think there is some good that happens in a needle exchange when they're done correctly. In West Virginia, however, we do not regulate a needle exchange to say what is correct in your operation. And when done correctly, the intent, and it's a good altruistic intent, is that the people that access a needle exchange, they are more likely to get into rehab. If it's done correctly, there's less likely that they're going to get Hep C transmitted around the community, or Hep B, or HIV. But there's a very qualifying statement made there, if they're done correctly. So there's other side impacts that there's not a lot of research on, unfortunately. And being a healthcare provider, I'm very familiar with the research with what happens within one that's done correctly. Outside of a needle exchange, things happen. One is you get this debris when they're not done correctly. So I wanted to bring home some numbers that are from within the Department of Health and Human Resources that we as a legislature have the ability to go in and force some regulation here should we choose. Because if we know it, what's going on, and we don't do it, then shame on us. And I say the same thing with DHHR. They knew what was going on, so shame on them. So I'm going to tell you some numbers that come from DHHR by their own self-reporting. In the year of 2019, they report dispensing about 1,440,000 needles in West Virginia. They have no idea what happened to nearly 500,000 of those needles. It's around 460,000 that by their own report they don't have returned. And as I thought about speaking to you today, Mr. President, to drive home an example of what it's like if you live in a community that's within a couple blocks from a needle exchange that operates, such as what I experienced on Valentine's Day, because I spent my Friday, and here's what happened. I had somebody come up to my office after seeing some interviews on the news about, you need to come down. They wrote a letter they wanted to have read before our Senate Health Committee because they couldn't be here because they worked 8 to 8 today. They had 12-hour shift that day and couldn't make it into our Health Committee if we ran the bill. And he said, in this letter, I'm going to invite anybody who wants to come down, please come down and see what we live in. And I just reflexively, I laughed and I said, you know what, nobody's going to come down. I said, you know what, I'll come. But I don't think anybody in that committee is going to do it. So I said, when can I be there? He said, you let me know on Friday and I'll meet your schedule. So I drove down to Huntington and spent my afternoon, several hours of Valentine's Day, and started walking along to see what the debris that's there. And it is shocking. And the only way that I thought that, and I didn't do it, and you're probably going to be thankful that I didn't do it. If I went and got a sharps container from any medical office here in Charleston, and I started going and I scattered it on your desks, I put it in your drawers, I put it down next to your feet, I put it in your chair, how would you have to look at your desk, your chair, Mr. President, and take caution for every move you make? What if you had one of the children that came down here this morning that lives in that community, and they want to go out and play in the yard or play in the park or play in the church lawn, and they have to play in that mess? That's what's happening, and we facilitate it. We facilitate it through DHHR in this state. Now, there are good exchanges that operate, don't get me wrong, because as you know, the bill that I initially put out said outlaw them effective upon passage. And if one of these children that came up here this morning, for all the good that a needle exchange may do in West Virginia, one of those children, your child, gets stuck by one of these needles that I just described, how much good has that needle exchange done you? Mr. President, I'm probably going to be talking about every day about this issue. And if DHHR doesn't do it, and I'll be running a bill every freaking session and talking about it, until this legislature takes responsibility for what we know by what DHHR reports. It can be done right. It's not happening. There's 500,000 needles out there just in this past year's evidence of it. So thank you for your time, Mr. President.
Thank you. Are there further members desiring to speak under remarks? Miscellaneous business. The junior senator from the 17th.
Thank you, Mr. President. Pending announcements, I move the Senate stand adjourned until tomorrow at 11 a.m.
Are there announcements? Senator from Morgan County.
Thank you, Mr. President. Your Committee on the Judiciary will meet today at 3 o'clock p.m. in the Judiciary Committee Room 208 West Wing.
Senator from...
Thank you, Mr. President. Your Committee on Education will meet at 2 o'clock in 451M and 10 minutes after Finance and Judiciary are over because we have a long agenda.
Senior Senator from the 15th.
Thank you, Mr. President. Your Committee on Finance will meet today at 3 p.m., room 451M, and the agenda has been posted.
The Senator from Marshall County.
Thank you, Mr. President. Your Committee on Health will meet at 1 p.m. in Senate Finance, and if we do not finish, we'll come back this evening to follow finance or judiciary, whichever, or to follow education. Education will go first. So finance or judiciary will finish, and then education will go, and then we'll go after that. And we do have dinner ordered if we happen to be here.
The Senior Senator from the 6th.
Thank you, Mr. President. Your Committee on Government Organization will be meeting today at 2 p.m. in room 208 West, and we too have a long agenda, and I guess we will come third after education or health, whichever is latter, and with finance and judiciary, we'll figure it out.
The Senator from Raleigh County.
Thank you, Mr. President. Your Committee on the Workforce will meet at 9:30 in the morning. I believe we may be putting out an originating bill as well as having Workforce West Virginia, and the Department of Education is part of that. So if members will be aware of that, to keep aware of the agenda that we'll be having. That'll be in 208 West.
Are there further announcements? Senator from Tucker County.
Thank you, Mr. President. Your Committee on Energy will be meeting today at 1 o'clock in 208 West. The agenda has been posted.
The senator from Mercer County.
Thank you, Mr. President. Your Committee on Economic Development will meet tomorrow at 1 o'clock, 208 West.
Additional announcements. Senator from Boone County.
Thank you, Mr. President. The Public Health Caucus will meet tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. in room 330. Continuation of the addiction issues, substance use disorder, and stigma.
Further announcements? Recognize Junior Senator from the 17th.
Thank you, Mr. President. I would just request unanimous consent that the comments by the senator from Putnam be placed in the appendix of the journal.
Junior Senator from the 4th comments be printed in the appendix of the journal. Is there objection? Objection has been heard.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Recognize Junior Senator from the 17th.
Thank you, Mr. President. I would move that the comments by the junior senator from the 4th comments be placed in the appendix of the journal.
I apologize to the body. The motion is out of order at this point. We have a motion on the floor to adjourn. So further announcements. Are there further announcements? Not. Question before the Senate is, shall the Senate stand adjourned until tomorrow morning at 11 a.m.? All those in favor will say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes do have it. Declare the Senate adjourned until tomorrow at 11 a.m.